Welcome back, brave wanderers of the shadows, to my channel, the place where history whispers and the dead sometimes answer. Tonight, we step not into haunted mansions, forests, or saloons, but into blood-soaked fields of Maryland, where the past still echoes in the clatter of musket fire, the scream of cannon, and the march of ghostly soldiers. These battlefields are not silent. They remember the fallen. They remember the fear, the fury, and the heartbreak of war. So stand close, hold your breath, and join me as we traverse the 25 most haunted battlefields in Maryland with ghostly soldiers. Because the dead are not gone. They still patrol these fields, and sometimes they march alongside the living. Antietam National Battlefield near Sharpsburg, Maryland, stands as one of the most somber and hallowed grounds in American history. On September 17, 1862, the clash of Union and Confederate forces left more than 23,000 soldiers dead, wounded, or missing in a single harrowing day. Today, the rolling fields, shaded groves, and quiet roads seem peaceful, almost serene, but visitors and locals alike know that the echoes of that day have never truly faded. Even in the absence of reenactments or guided tours, many report experiences that defy explanation. Cannon fire rattling across the hills, cries of soldiers carried on the wind, and figures in uniform appearing among the cornfields and woodlines, seemingly unaware of the modern world around them. The battlefield is particularly eerie at dusk, when the light softens and shadows lengthen across the fields. Witnesses have described seeing a lone Union soldier pacing among the corn, rifle held tightly, eyes scanning the horizon as though waiting for an order that never came. His movements are deliberate, methodical, almost mechanical, as if bound to the routines of battle. Some say his gaze follows you for a moment, then he turns and continues down a row of stalks, disappearing into the shadows when approached. Others have seen groups of ghostly figures, sometimes a small squad, moving information across open ground, their boots silent on the soil, rifles carried with uncanny precision. At night, the haunting intensifies. Phantom wagons, creaking and groaning, as if bearing heavy loads, appear along the old paths. Some witnesses report glimpsing wounded soldiers laid upon these wagons, their faces pale, hands reaching out for help that will never come. In the distance, the subtle report of artillery or the snap of a musket can be heard, even when no modern weapon is fired. The sounds are faint yet piercing and carry across the quiet fields with surreal clarity. Occasionally, cries of anguish or the murmur of orders drift on the breeze, chilling visitors and drawing them toward spots where no reenactment or human presence exists. The ghosts of soldiers aiding the fallen are among the most poignant. Visitors tell of seeing men in tattered uniforms kneeling beside comrades, offering water, calling out names, or attempting to carry the wounded to safety. Yet, when approached, these figures vanish, leaving only a slight disturbance in the grass, a lingering chill, or the faint scent of gunpowder in the air. Witnesses often describe a sense of oppressive grief at these moments, as though the earth itself carries the sorrow and desperation of that single violent day. The battlefield seems alive with memory, every furrowed row, every wooded edge, and every hollow reflecting the weight of the lives lost there. Sharpsburg-esque locals have long shared stories of lingering spirits. Some report seeing entire regiments moving silently through the fog in the early morning hours, only to dissolve into mist when viewed directly. Others have felt sudden drops in temperature while walking along the sunken road or Burnside Bridge, spots that were once epicenters of carnage. The wind itself seems to carry whispers of strategy and commands, as if the battlefield remembers its own history and refuses to let it fade. Even during midday, when sunlight stretches across the fields, a sense of watchfulness remains, an awareness that the land is haunted not by menace, but by the weight of memory, grief, and unfinished duty. Visitors often report sensations that are difficult to describe. A sudden tightness in the chest, the inexplicable chill of a phantom breeze, or the impression that someone is standing just beyond their sight. Some have glimpsed soldiers' faces in the fog or mist, expressions frozen between fear, resolve, and pain. There are accounts of hearing voices calling out names, not modern names, but those that seem pulled from history, as though the dead are reminding the living of their presence, their sacrifices, and their humanity. The fields of Antietam are saturated with this grief. Every ridge, every creek, and every tree seems to hold a memory of the fallen. Visitors report that the soil feels heavy, as if each step presses against the weight of history. At night, when the moon casts long shadows across the battlefield, it is not uncommon for ghostly figures to appear briefly on the horizon. Soldiers crouching among corn stalks, medics aiding the wounded, officers surveying the terrain. These apparitions are transient, vanishing when approached, yet their presence lingers in the mind long after visitors leave. The air often carries the smell of gunpowder and smoke, faint and fleeting, yet unmistakable. Witnesses describe an unshakable sense that the dead are present, not in anger, but in memory. The cries, the footsteps, and the distant cannon fire remind those who tread these fields that the cost of freedom was measured in human life, and that the souls of Antietam are forever tethered to ground they once defended or sought to conquer. Antietam National Battlefield is more than a historic site. It is a living memorial, a place where the past reaches out to present. Soldiers in uniform still march across fields at dusk. Phantom wagons carry the wounded, and the air is thick with whispered cries and distant gunfire. The earth itself seems unwilling to forget the grief and heroism of that single bloody day. Visitors leave with a sense of awe, unease, and respect, knowing that the spirits of Antietam continue to walk the cornfields, bound forever, to a battle that changed history and stained the land with memory. Monocacy National Battlefield near Frederick, Maryland, is a place where history and legend intertwine in the quiet folds of its rolling hills. Often called a battle that saved Washington, this site was a stage for a desperate clash in July 1864, when Union forces attempted to halt Confederate troops from marching on the Nation's capital. Though the battle ended in tactical defeat for the Union, the delay proved critical, allowing reinforcements to arrive and ultimately protecting Washington from capture. Today, the battlefield is peaceful and green, but many visitors and locals insist that the echoes of that fateful day still linger in the misty morning air and the quiet of the night. Witnesses report that at dusk, when the fog begins to settle over the ridges and fields, the sound of drums rolls across the hillside, distant at first, then growing with uncanny clarity. These are not the measured beats of modern visitors or reenactors, but the relentless cadence of phantom army preparing for engagement. Some have described lines of soldiers, uniformed and spectral, marching through the haze. Their movements are deliberate, methodical, and frighteningly precise, as if bound to the discipline and urgency of a battle long past. When approached, these apparitions vanish like smoke, leaving only the rustling of the tall grasses and the faint scent of gunpowder lingering in the cool air. Orders are sometimes heard, shouted in urgent tones that vanish the moment anyone tries to pinpoint their origin. Visitors report hearing commanding voices calling out formations, retreats, or warnings, only to find the battlefield silent when they strain to locate the source. The voices carry a sense of authority and desperation, a reminder of the soldiers' determination to hold the line against overwhelming odds. The air seems to vibrate with tension, as if the past refuses to be silenced, replaying the urgency, fear, and valor of men who stood with courage despite the looming tide of enemy forces. Lanterns are a frequent sight at night, flickering among the trees and along the ridges. They cast a dim, eerie glow, revealing glimpses of uniforms and rifles. Some visitors report that these lights move independently, drifting across the battlefield in a pattern that suggests the slow, careful advance or reconnaissance or the cautious patrol of the unit. Others feel invisible hands guiding them forward, pressing gently on their backs or shoulders, as though the spirits of the fallen are urging the living to witness, remember, and understand the significance of their sacrifice. There's a sensation that the dead still maintain command over the land they fought for, shaping the experience of those who walk the fields long after the fighting has ended. The battlefield is dotted with natural features that seem to amplify these ghostly impressions. Low hills, dense woodlines, and the bend of the Monocacy River create pockets where the fog lingers, sound travels strangely, and shadows shift in unusual ways. Hikers and history enthusiasts have reported sudden drops in temperature, unexplained chills, and a sensation of being watched, even when alone. Some describe seeing the silhouettes of horsemen, their mounts outlined against a moonlit mist, moving as if carrying dispatches or scouting ahead of a larger force. Some describe seeing the silhouettes of horsemen, their mounts outlined against a moonlit mist, moving as if carrying dispatches or scouting ahead of a larger force. Others have glimpsed fleeting shapes of infantrymen crouching in the tall grass, rifles at the ready, eyes scanning the horizon for threats that no longer exist. The phantom presence is not always threatening, but it is overwhelming in its intensity. There are accounts of footsteps pacing along the ridges where regiments once formed, the soft clatter of ammunition boxes, and the distant thump of artillery. Some visitors report a profound sense of sorrow and resolve and understanding that these men and women, though long dead, were committed to a cause they could not abandon. Even when no figures are visible, the battlefield seems alive with memory. The rustling of leaves, the whisper of the wind, and the echo of commands carry an almost palpable weight of history. Nightfall brings the most vivid experiences. Observers have seen entire lines of soldiers moving in formation, bayonets glinting faintly in the moonlight, the rhythmic tramp of boots blending with the fog. Shadows flicker along the ridges, as though men are crossing unseen paths. And occasional flashes of light resemble musket fire or distant cannon bursts. The battlefield feels like a suspended moment in time, where past and present coexist, and visitors are caught in the tension between reality and memory. Where past and present coexist, and visitors are caught in the tension between reality and memory. Those who linger too long often leave with a sense of awe, unease, and a deep respect for the lives that shaped the outcome of the Civil War. Those who linger too long often leave with a sense of awe, unease, and a deep respect for the lives that shaped the outcome of the Civil War. Monocacy National Battlefield is more than just a historic site. It is a living memorial to courage, sacrifice, and the unbroken memory of those who fought there. Monocacy National Battlefield is more than just a historic site. It is a living memorial to courage, sacrifice, and the unbroken memory of those who fought there. It is a living memorial to courage, sacrifice, and the unbroken memory of those who fought there. Phantom drums, spectral lanterns, and invisible hands all serve as reminders that the events of July 1864 are not fully past. The soldiers who gave their all that day continue to roam the hills, marching across the fog-laden fields, calling out to the living, and guarding the memory of a battle that, in its desperate fight, saved a nation. The air itself seems saturated with their presence. Every shadow and whisper a tribute to the bravery and determination of men who refused to let Washington fall, even as they paid the ultimate price. South Mountain Battlefield, near Boonesboro, Maryland, is a landscape etched with history and shadowed by the echoes of a brutal Civil War clash. In September 1862, Union and Confederate forces met along these craggy ridges in a struggle that would shape the course of the Maryland campaign. Today, the rolling hills and dense woodlands seem peaceful, but visitors often report that the air still hums with the energy of battle, a spectral residue that refuses to fade. Those who walk the ridges at dusk speak of sights and sounds that belong not to the present, but to a violent past that lingers stubbornly among the trees. One most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of ghostly figures on horseback. As the sun sinks behind the ridges, shadows seem to coalesce into mounted soldiers, their uniforms muted in the twilight, their horses moving silently over the terrain. These apparitions are not always fleeting. Witnesses describe moments when the spectral cavalry appears paused atop the hills, surveying the valleys below with a frozen vigilance, as if waiting for orders that will never come. When approached, they vanish into the mist, leaving only the faint sound of hoofbeats lingering in the imagination. Cannons are another persistent echo of the past. Visitors have reported hearing distant booms, low and thunderous, cutting to the quiet of the ridge. These sounds do not correspond with any modern artillery, reenactments, or nearby construction. They seem to rise from the hills themselves, a phantom symphony of war replaying the Dia-esque violent encounters. Alongside the booms, there are accounts of rifle fire and the clatter of musket volleys, sudden and sharp, appearing from nowhere and fading just as quickly. The battlefield becomes a stage where the sounds of 1862 refuse to be silenced, carry with them the fear, chaos, and determination of the soldiers who fought and fell here. Mist seems to rise unnaturally along the ridges, curling through the trees and settling in the valleys, amplifying the feeling of otherworldliness. Hikers and history enthusiasts often find themselves enveloped in a fog, so thick it muffles sound and obscures the landscape, creating the sensation of walking in a dreamscape. Within this mist, shadows move in ways that defy explanation. Some observers describe seeing entire lines of soldiers advancing to the fog, bayonets glinting faintly, their movements deliberate and eerily silent. Others see single figures standing in isolated clearings, silhouetted against the twilight, as though frozen in a moment of tense anticipation. Sunset seems to be the time when the battlefield is most alive. Shadows stretch long across the terrain, and the hills take on a golden haze that can suddenly turn silvery or gray as if the past itself is trying to assert itself over the present. Soldy Ursa silhouettes appear along the ridge lines, sometimes in poses of readiness, other times crouched as if taking cover from invisible gunfire. Some witnesses claim to have seen officers giving commands, their gestures deliberate but fleeting, disappearing as the mind strains to understand whether what it sees is real or imagined. These figures evoke both awe and unease, a reminder that South Mountain was once a place where courage and fear met in equal measure. Audio phenomena add another layer to the haunting. Those who visit with recording equipment have occasionally captured faint drum beats, the rhythm of marching troops, and the occasional crackle of musket fire. Playback. These sounds seem to rise from the very earth, an auditory shadow of the battle that once raged across the hills. Even without recordings, many visitors report an almost tangible pressure in the air, a feeling that the battlefield itself remembers each step, each volley, and each fallen comrade. The battlefield's forests contribute to the sense of lingering spirits. Trees that once bore the brunt of cannon and rifle fire now stand as silent witnesses, their leaves whispering with the wind in patterns that some interpret as echoes of commands shouted long ago. Trails wind through the woods where soldiers once scrambled for position, and it is along these trails that the most vivid sightings occur. Figures are often glimpsed at the edges of paths, their forms merging with the shadows, only to vanish when approached. Some hikers report a sensation of being followed, as though the soldiers' eyes track movements unseen, maintaining a vigilance that transcends death. South Mountain Battlefield is more than a historic site. It is a landscape where memory has taken on a spectral life. Ghostly riders, phantom gunfire, marching drums, and soldiers frozen in the folds of mist create a vivid tableau that merges history with the supernatural. The ridge lines seem alive with the presence of men who face impossible odds, their courage etched into the very soil. Visitors leave with a sense of reverence and unease, carrying the impression that, though the battle ended over a century ago, the spirits of South Mountain remain, guarding, marching, and remembering in silence, demanding that history itself not be forgotten. Fort McHenry in Baltimore is known as a symbol of American resilience, the site where the flag still waves in honor of a Nation-esque endurance. Yet beneath the historical significance lies a layer of shadow and mystery, as if the past refuses to rest quietly within the star-shaped walls. Visitors and historians alike have long reported that the fort is not just a monument, but a stage where the echoes of 1814 and the War of 1812 linger, creating a landscape haunted by the spirits of soldiers, sentries, and the cannon fire that once threatened the city. As night falls over the fort, the atmosphere changes. A visitor walking along the ramparts may suddenly feel a cold gust that cuts through the warmth of a summer evening, a chill that seems to move along the stone walls with purpose. Some claim this is the presence of phantom sentries, patrols still dutifully circling the fort long after the living have gone. Their steps are said to be soft yet unmistakable, tapping along the bricks in measured cadence. as if carrying out a drill from over 2 centuries ago. Those who pause often report a heavy sense of being watched, an invisible vigilance lingering in the night air. Cannons are perhaps the most dramatic element of the hauntings. While no reenactment is taking place, some visitors report hearing the deep boom of artillery firing from the ramparts. The sound rises and falls, echoing across the harbor, accompanied by the acrid scent of gunpowder that appears from nowhere. On some nights, the firing seems sporadic, like a battle frozen in fragments. Each detonation a phantom echo of the bombardment that inspired Francis Scott Key to pen the verses that would become the Star-Spangled Banner. People have described moments when the air vibrates faintly, a low resonance, suggesting the very walls of Fort McHenry retain the memory of gunfire, repeating it for those who are sensitive enough to perceive it. Bugle calls are another frequent report from visitors wandering the grounds at dusk. These are not part of any modern ceremony. They arise spontaneously, piercing the quiet night with brief, mournful notes. The call is sometimes accompanied by the sounds of marching, the faint shuffle of boots against brick, or the clinking of equipment long since rusted away. Some interpret the bugle as a summoning, a ritual still maintained by the spirits of soldiers bound to fort, maintaining order and readiness even when no living officer stands nearby. The flag itself, Fort McHenry's most famous symbol, seems central to the hauntings. Some visitors claim to have seen figures climbing the ramparts at odd hours, silhouetted against the night sky, raising the massive banner. The soldiers are silent, their movements deliberate, a ceremonial duty repeated endlessly. There's a feeling of reverence, a frozen tribute to the endurance and courage of those who defended the fort. On some nights, the flag appears a wave with unnatural fluidity, as if touched by unseen hands, capturing a moment in history that refuses to remain static, caught between life and eternity. Ghostly apparitions are not confined to the ramparts. Shadows flit through the barracks and along the parade grounds, often glimpsed from the corner of the eye. Some report seeing the faint outline of officers issuing orders, their gestures formal yet fleeting. Others have witnessed figures carrying equipment, performing drills, or pausing at cannons as if inspecting them for readiness. These specters are silent, but their presence is unmistakable, and those who approach too closely often find the forms dissolve into mist or darkness, leaving only the sense of another presence behind. Visitors also speak of sounds that cannot be explained, of muffled shouting, clanging metal, or the distant tread of boots along stone pathways. These are moments when history seems to overlap with the present, and the living feel for an instant the weight of a fort under siege. Even the harbor carries its own spectral echoes. The sound of phantom oars in the water or the distant flap of sails add a haunting backdrop to the fort's nighttime ambience. It is as if Fort McHenry itself remembers, replaying the defense of Baltimore over and over for those willing to witness it. The fort is not merely haunted by random apparitions. Soldiers perform duties they once carried out with pride. Sentries patrol with discipline, and the flag is raised in ritualistic precision. Visitors often leave with the impression that they have glimpsed more than ghosts. They have seen devotion frozen in time, a memory so strong it has taken on a tangible presence. Even centuries later, Fort McHenry stands not only as a monument to American history, but as a place where the past walks quietly among the living. Walking the ground at night, one may feel both awe and unease. The fort seems alive with memories, with the whispers of cannon fire, and bugle calls pressing just beneath the surface. Soldiers march unseen, sentries patrol endlessly, and the flag waves, carried by invisible hands. Fort McHenry is a place where history and the spectral meet, where courage and duty extend beyond death, and where visitors are reminded that some moments, some people, and some battles are never truly gone. Bladensburg Battlefield in Maryland is a quiet stretch of land today, its fields calm and its trees swaying gently in the wind. Yet beneath this tranquility lies the echo of chaos, a past steeped in smoke, gunpowder, and a clash of steel. On August 24th, 1814, American and British forces collided here. in a fierce engagement that left the landscape scarred, and the memory of battle deeply embedded. Over 2 centuries later, visitors report that the echoes of that conflict still linger, haunting the field in ways that defy explanation. As dusk settles over the rolling terrain, the atmosphere seems to shift. Some who walk the battlefield in the fading light describe seeing lines of soldiers materialize across the open fields. British redcoats march in formation, their bayonets glinting faintly in the last rays of sunlight, while American militia advance from the opposite side. The figures are sharply dressed, their movements precise. Yet there is something off an otherworldly stiffness, a subtle translucence, as though they belong to another plane. Moments later, just as quickly as they appear, the soldiers vanish, leaving the observer alone amid the grass and a lingering sense of unease. Phantom gunfire is a common report among those who linger here at dusk. Sharp, echoing bursts ricochet across the fields, startling the living. Sometimes the sound is accompanied by flashes of light that suggest musket fire, though no smoke or gunpowder smell follows. These fleeting bursts of violence seem tied to the memory of the battle itself, replaying fragments of the chaos that consumed both sides. Visitors often speak of a tension in the air at these moments, a sudden tightening of the chest, as if the battlefield itself is holding its breath and remembering the carnage. A sudden tightening of the chest, as if the battlefield itself is holding its breath and remembering the carnage. As if the battlefield itself is holding its breath and remembering the carnage. The echo of officers' voices calling out orders, the urgent bark of commands layered over the distant roar of combat. The words are sometimes understandable, as though carried clearly across the years, yet at other times they dissolve into a low murmur, haunting and indecipherable. The cries of men urging comrades forward, warning of flanking maneuvers, or begging for retreat, seem to hang in the air, leaving an impression of confusion and desperation that mirrors the disorder of that historic day. Walkers on the field sometimes notice the faint outlines of formations in the grass, patterns that vanish if approached too closely. There is a sense that the battlefield is a canvas of repetition, where the final moments of soldiers who died or fled are endlessly replayed, trapped in an invisible cycle that refuses to end. Many who experience these phenomena describe an overwhelming feeling of tension, a heaviness that presses on the chest. It is as though the land itself is charged with the energy of that fateful day. Some have felt a cold breeze sweep across the fields, sudden and localized, brushing past in a way that cannot be explained by the evening air. Others have glimpsed movement in their peripheral visiona, figures darting behind trees or across open ground, disappearing when directly observed. These moments are fleeting but unforgettable, leaving a lasting impression of presence where none should exist. Sightings are not limited to distant figures. Some report closer encounters, seeing soldiers staggering across the field as if wounded, bayonets lowered, eyes fixed on an unseen threat. Others describe horses appearing and vanishing mid-gallop, their riders silent yet unmistakably real. There are stories of the sounds of cavalry hooves pounding the earth, followed by sudden silence, leaving the visitor with a lingering adrenaline spike, and the eerie impression of being momentarily surrounded by the chaos of a battle long past. Locals and historians alike note that the phenomenon seems to favor specific times of day. Dusk and the early evening are most commonly associated with activity, when shadows grow long and the fading light casts everything into a liminal space. Fog rolling in from nearby streams enhances the atmosphere, blurring the lines between past and present. Visitors walking slowly through the battlefield at these hours often report the strongest sensations of unease and the clearest sightings of phantom soldiers marching or engaging in combat. The battlefield seems alive with memory, a testament to the intensity of human experience during those fateful hours. It is as if the souls of those who perish here are caught in confusion of their last moments, unable to move on, doomed to relive the clash again and again. For some, the experience is terrifying, a confrontation with the thin veil between life and death. The thin veil between life and death. For others, it is a sobering reminder of the cost of conflict, the permanence of sacrifice, and persistence of memory. Walking across Bladensburg battlefield at twilight, one cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing in. Phantom troops rise and fall. The clash of musket fire and shouted orders echo faintly through the air, and shadows move just beyond the edge of vision. The land is charged with remembrance, a place where the final moments of soldiers are never truly gone, and where the living can witness, if only briefly, the unrest echoes of the War of 1812. Here, on this Maryland field, the past does not rest quietly. It marches on endlessly, visible and invisible, for anyone willing to see. Fort Washington, perched along the Potomac River, has long stood as a sentinel of history. Its stone walls and cannon speak of centuries past, a time when soldiers managed ramparts to guard the approach to Washington, D.C. Today, the fort appears quiet and unassuming, yet those who walk its corridors after dark often report that the past refuses to stay buried. Visitors speak of footsteps echoing on empty stairs, heavy and measured, the cadence of soldiers long gone. The sound carries through stone halls and across battlements, as if someone or something is pacing a perpetual watch. The air often changes subtly for those who linger near the fort at night. A faint chill creeps across the battlements, and the scent of gunpowder sometimes drifts on the wind, though no modern weapons are present. Cannon fire, distant and hollow, echoes across the river, startling the unsuspecting. Some say it is a phantom reenactment, a spectral drill or warning from centuries past. The booms carry a weight, a reminder of a time when lives were on the line, and vigilance was the only way to survive. Shadowy figures are frequently reported along the battlements and walkways. Visitors describe seeing outlines of soldiers, muskets slung over shoulders or raised in the act of aiming. They appear suddenly, solid enough to cast faint shadows, then vanish when approached. Others claim to see silhouettes pacing the walls, stopping at the same guard posts, turning in unison, as if carrying out an invisible routine. Some of these apparitions seem aware of the living, moving aside or holding their ground, as if acknowledging the presence of the observer while maintaining their solemn duty. Inside the fort, empty rooms feel alive with memory. Heavy boots echo across wooden floors, doors creak as if moved by unseen hands, and distant shouts carry the weight of urgency. Visitors sometimes feel the pull of attention, as if unseen eyes are watching their every move. The experience is not always frightening. Many report a sense of reverence, a feeling that the spirits are protective, continuing to guard the fort and its surrounding river as they once did in life. It is as if their devotion transcends death, ensuring that Fort Washington remains both a landmark and a sentinel. The battlements themselves are the epicenter of activity. On quiet nights, when the river is still and fog drifts along the banks, the ghostly soldiers are most visible. Some visitors have described watching figures load cannons, coordinate movements, or give orders, all performed with meticulous precision. The actions are deliberate, practiced, and strangely calm, as if the soldiers exist in a constant state of readiness, forever carrying out their duty. Even during the day, subtle phenomena are sometimes observed. Shadows flicker across the old brick walls. Unaccounted noises resonate from empty chambers. And certain hallways always seem colder than others. Staff and frequent visitors report inexplicable sensationsa, a tap on the shoulder, the sensation of someone walking behind them, or the feeling of being guided along a path without conscious effort. Many interpret these occurrences as the lingering presence of soldiers ensuring the fort is respected, guarding the living as they once guarded the river. Those who explore Fort Washington at night often remark on the surreal contrast between the present and the past. The fort is a historical site, open to tourists and families during daylight, but after dark, it seems to slip out of time. The ghosts of soldiers bring history alive in a tangible, sometimes unsettling way. Musket fire, marching footsteps, and the low murmur commands remind visitors that this place was built for defense and survival, and that the men who man its walls left an imprint that refuses to fade. The protective nature of the spirits is a common theme in eyewitness accounts. Unlike restless or vengeful ghosts found elsewhere, the apparitions at Fort Washington are often described as orderly, disciplined, and purposeful. They do not seek to harm the living. Rather, they maintain vigilance, silently teaching lessons of duty, courage, and sacrifice. Visitors often leave with an eerie sense of reassurance, sensing that unseen guardians still patrol the fort, keeping watch over both the site and those who walk within it. At night, when the river is dark and still, the soundscape changes. The echo of distant cannon fire, the soft thud of unseen boots on stairs, and the faint murmur commands fill the air. Fog drifts along the ramparts, wrapping the stone walls in ethereal mist. Figures appear and vanish, moving in the shadows as if performing an eternal drill. Some pause to look at the living, a silent acknowledgement of their presence, then return to their watch, dutiful and unwavering. Fort Washington stands today as both a historical monument and a place of lingering presence. The spirits of soldiers past remain devoted, patrolling the fort as they once patrolled the Potomac, vigilant and solemn. They are reminders of courage, of vigilance, and of the weight of history. Visitors who walk the fort after dark step not only into the past, but into a space where memory, duty, and the spectral presence of those long gone converge, creating an atmosphere both chilling and reverent a place, with a living witness, the tireless guardians of Fort Washington, standing watch forever along the Rivera's edge. Brooklanville Battlefield, a quiet stretch of rolling hills and wooded paths in Maryland, is steeped in Revolutionary War history. Unlike the more famous battle sites, Brooklanville has maintained a stillness that seems almost sacred, a calm that belies the violence once wrought here. Yet those who visit after dark often discover that the past has not fully released its grip. Spectral soldiers, clad in the blue and buff of the Continental Army, have been reported pacing along tree-lined lanes, their boots muffled by the soft earth, their eyes fixed on horizons long changed. Some appear mounted, ghostly horses moving silently, leaving no mark on the grass, yet evoking the weight of history in every step. As dusk falls over the battlefield, the light shifts in ways that feel unnatural. Shadows stretch and twist, and fleeting orbs of pale illumination hover over areas once scarred by musket fire and cannon blasts. These lights are not lanterns or fireflies, nor do they respond to observersial movements. They drift, pause, and vanish, as though replaying moments from skirmishes long past. Witnesses often describe a sudden drop in temperature in these zones, an icy chill that seeps into bones and sharpens the senses. An icy chill that seeps into the bones and sharpens the senses. Even the wind seems to carry whispers of orders given long ago, faintly repeated, twisting through the trees and leaving listeners uncertain whether they heard commands from the present or echoes of history. The terrain itself appears to retain memory. Hikers report trails that seem longer than they should, dips and rises that were never noticed in daylight, and a disorienting quiet that falls suddenly, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves. Broken only by the soft rustle of leaves. On the more open stretches, it is not uncommon for observers to see weapons of muskets, bayonets, and swords are hovering briefly, then vanishing, as if the soldiers are still engaging in a phantom drill. Rather, it is ceremonial, a spectral replay of duty, courage, and vigilance. Many who wander the battlefield at night speak of a strange duality. By day, Brooklanville is serene, the gentle slope of hills and the shade of trees inviting leisurely walks. But at night, the sight transforms. The air grows thick with unseen presence, every rustle of leaves or snapping twig magnified in imagination. Some visitors where they have felt the weight of unseen eyes, sensing that the Continental soldiers are watching, guarding not only the historic grounds, but also those who tread them. The feeling is unnerving but not malevolent. It is as if the soldiers are bound to the land, maintaining their post for eternity, ensuring that the battlefield is never forgotten, Sounds play an essential role in the haunting. Observers report hearing the soft clatter of hooves on grass, distant orders shouted in urgent tones, and the occasional echo of cannon fire that seems to come from nowhere. These noises do not appear to have a source and vanish when approached. Some believe the phenomenon is tied to the land itself, that the earth remembers the cries, struggles, and strategies enacted here centuries ago. Others insist it is the soldiers themselves, still marching, still practicing maneuvers, ensuring that the battlefield remains a place of reverence and history. At the edges of the woods, fleeting glimpses of figures appear between the trees. They are often silhouetted, partially transparent, with muskets resting lightly on shoulders. Some are mounted on horses that seem to emerge in the mist, their movements deliberate and quiet. Those who try to approach these figures often find themselves alone moments later, as if the spirits have acknowledged the living, then return to their eternal vigil. A few have claimed to feel brushes of air as the horses pass, a subtle warning that they are near. Even in the faint light of early morning, the battlefield can feel alive with echoes. Shadows seem to linger longer than they should, and trails that were clear the day before may suddenly seem obstructed by the presence of the past. The soldiers are never hostile. They do not chase or harm. Instead, they appear to act as guardians of memory, making sure that the history of Brooklanville battlefield is felt, seen, and respected. Some locals recount stories passed down through generations. Families who have lived near the battlefield for centuries tell their ancestors witnessing figures riding along the tree lanes, of hearing commands carried on the wind, and of lights that flicker without flame. These tales are often treated as cautionary or reverential, a reminder that Brooklanville is more than just land. It is a repository of courage, strategy, and sacrifice. Visitors who spend the night on the battlefield often emerge at dawn changed. There is a solemnity, a weight, a reminder that the ground beneath their feet has been tread by those willing to risk everything for a fledgling nation. Some carry the chill with them for hours, a lingering sensation of the salty earth's presence. Others recall the whispers, the hovering weapons, and the spectral formations, feeling a connection to history that is both eerie and profoundly moving. Brooklanville battlefield remains a place where past and present intertwine. The phantom soldiers of the Continental Army, the unexplained lights, and the whispers of commands create a living memory of the Revolutionary War. It is a site where the spirits of those who fought continue their duty, silently ensuring that the sacrifices made are never forgotten. Walk the paths at dusk, and you may see them, mounted figures moving between trees, muskets at the ready, or the soft shimmer of spectral light over a skirmish site. Step carefully, listen closely, and you might hear history itself breathing in the wind. Fort Frederick, perched above the Potomac River at Big Pool, Maryland, is a relic of colonial ambition and military vigilance, built during the tense years of the French and Indian War. Its massive stone walls have stood for centuries, weathering storms, time, and human activity. Yet, alongside its history of strategy and defense, the fort carries a quieter, more unsettling presentia, a legacy not written in records or maps, but whispered to the shadows of night. For those who venture here after dark, Fort Frederick is alive in ways that textbooks cannot capture. Visitors often report the echo of footsteps along the ramparts, heavy and deliberate, as if soldiers long gone continue their patrols. The stone corridors, silent by day, seem to hum with energy once the sun sets. Some describe hearing the rhythmic clatter of muskets being loaded and fired in formation, the sound precise yet distant, echoing off the fort's walls with eerie authenticity. There is no wind, no explanation, only the certainty that someone or something is repeating centuries-old drills. When the moon rises high, its light casting long shadows across the courtyard, figures are occasionally seen pacing along the ramparts. They are dressed in the uniforms of colonial era, muskets slung over shoulders, eyes fixed straight ahead. Observers report that the soldiers move silently, their boots making no sound against the stone floor, and yet the sensation of their presence is undeniable. As soon as anyone tries to approach, the figures dissipate into the night air like mist, leaving only the cold-bided history behind. The fort's interior is equally haunted by remnants of the past. Rooms that once held officers now seem to breathe with anticipation. Doors creak open without wind, and shadows flit across walls where no one stands. Some visitors have seen tables set as though for inspection or meal, complete with invisible silverware, only to vanish moments later. The air often grows heavy with the faint scent of gunpowder and smoke, a subtle reminder that the echoes of conflict are never truly gone. Even the courtyards carry a sense of vigilance. Witnesses report ghostly drills taking place beneath the moonlight, soldiers forming lines, rifles raised in careful unison, then dispersing as though responding to an unseen command. Some describe phantom officers giving orders, their voices carried on the wind, sharp and commanding, though no one is present, as if unseen sentries are moving along its banks. Lights sometimes appear along the walls, small orbs drifting across the courtyard, pausing as if inspecting the living, before continuing their silent patrol. Hikers and history enthusiasts alike report chills running through their bodies, a deep awareness of the centuries that have passed and the people who remain, tethered by loyalty and unfinished duty. Many locals recount stories passed down through generations, tales of soldiers appearing on anniversaries of significant battles or drills, marching silently until the first light of dawn. Some visitors claim to hear the faint clink of bayonets against a stone or the soft murmur of conversations between officers that vanish as quickly as they appear. These experiences are never aggressive. The spirits do not attack. Instead, they insist upon recognition, a testament to the lives they once led and the duty they continue to uphold. Even during quiet hours, the fort's presence is palpable. The wind through the battlements can sound like whispered commands, and shadows cast by the moon may seem to take the shapes of sentries standing at attention. People report feeling watched, not threatened, a sense that summonia or many summonees will remain on guard. Visitors often leave with a profound sense of reverence, carry with them an awareness of the fort's dual legacy, one a stone in history, the other of spirits and memory. Some claim that the ghosts of Fort Frederick are trapped not by the fort's walls alone, but by the sense of duty that defined them in life. Orders once given, drills once perfected, vigilance once maintained, these routines have transcended death, creating a spectral echo that refuses to fade. Soldiers walk the ramparts, patrol the courtyards, and march silently through the gates, eternally bound to the posts they once defended. Those who linger near the fort after nightfall often speak of leaving a part of themselves behind, touched by the spectral presence and by the gravity of history. The moonlight glints off empty muskets, shadows stand where no one should, and the air is thick with the sense of lives devoted to a cause long past, yet forever present. Fort Frederick is more than a relic. It is a living monument to duty, courage, and endurance of the human spirit. Step inside after dark, and the ghosts of soldiers still pace the ramparts, musket in hand, eyes fixed on an invisible enemy. Listen closely, and you may hear the snap of leather, the whisper of orders, the clatter of footsteps on stone. Watch carefully, and you might glimpse a figure fading into mist, a sentinel of history keeping eternal watch. Here, on this ancient ground, the past and present merge, and the spirits of Fort Frederick remain vigilant, never leaving, never resting, always bound to their post. Green Springs Battlefield near Antietam, Maryland, is a place where history feels alive, but not in the way of textbooks and monuments. The fields here, etched through the scars of the Civil War, hold memories far deeper than the soil. By day, the rolling hills seem peaceful, dotted with stone markers and quiet trees, but after sunset, the landscape changes. A dense, gray mist seeps across the fields, curling around the hills and settling into low valleys, carrying with it the echoes of a past steeped in conflict and loss. Witnesses tell the first signs as the sun dips below the horizon. A chill settles over the battlefield, sudden and unnatural, even on warm summer nights. The mist thickens along the ridges, hiding the terrain and shaping shadows that seem to move on their own. From these shadows, shapes begin to emerge of figures on horseback, their movements precise yet otherworldly. Cavalry charges sweep across hills that should be impossible to climb, horses' hooves silent against the grass. yet the earth seems to tremble beneath their phantom weight. Riders appear dressed in faded uniforms, their faces obscured by distance and mist, their muskets glinting faintly in the moonlight. Sounds accompany the spectral display. Distant shouts ripple across the fields, low and urgent, carrying orders from unseen officers. The sharp cracks of rifles flash briefly, followed by silence, then the same sounds again, as if a single skirmish has been replaying endlessly. Some visitors swear they hear the clatter of sabers, the rustle of uniforms, and the muffled cries of men wounded in a battle that time cannot release. Each noise is precise, calculated, yet fleeting. Step too close, and it vanishes, leaving only the faint smell of gunpowder lingering in the mist. The battlefield's uneven hills make the phantom maneuvers all the more eerie. Observers have described figures appearing on ridges and then disappearing before reaching the base, as though the soldiers are performing a drill for eyes that are no longer there. Visitors walking the fields at night sometimes feel themselves gently shoved aside, nudged by invisible hands guiding the living away from the paths the dead are still trying to hold. It is never violent, but insistent, as if the soldiers of Green Spring still maneuver for battle, unaware that the world has moved on without them. Those who pause near the lower fields report seeing brief flashes of calora, a glimpse of a uniform sleeve, the sheen of musket barrella, as spectral soldiers march silently in formation. Sometimes, lantern-like orbs float just above the grass, illuminating the mist with pale light, before vanishing into the darkness. These lights seem to trace the route of long-ago charges, flickering in patterns that suggest orders, tactics, and maneuvers preserved beyond life. A hush often falls over visitors when these phenomena occur. The mist muffles footsteps. The wind carries whispers. And the battlefield itself feels alive with attention. Even the birds and small animals seem to sense the unseen presence, falling silent as if paying respect to the unseen army still holding these fields. People report an almost tangible tension in the air, the sensation that they are intruding on a rehearsal that has continued for more than a century. Local stories have passed down warnings to those who wander after dark. Soldiers lost in battle may appear close enough to be touched, only to dissolve into mist if approached. Some accounts tell of witnesses who felt the cold press of a uniformed hand against their back, as if being directed to Sophidia, or perhaps being moved out of Harma S-way during a phantom engagement. The experience is described as startling, yet strangely solemn, a reminder of duty that extends beyond death. Visitors often describe leaving the battlefield at dawn changed. The fog lifts slowly, revealing the undisturbed fields, the sun glinting off the stone markers. And the peace of the land restored. Yet, those who experience the night cannot shake the feeling that the echoes are never truly gone. In dreams, the sounds return of the distant cannon fire, the cries of soldiers, the flash of rifles in the mist. Even in broad daylight, a visitor may glance at the hills and sense the invisible army marching across impossible terrain. Ever alert, ever ready. Green Springs battlefield is not a place of malice, nor a place of random haunting. The spirits that linger are bound by duty, by memories of orders given, charges made, and men lost. They do not seek to frighten. They seek only to continue the battle that history forced upon them. The mist, the whispers, and the phantom cavalry are the remnants of a world where courage and survival were measured in yards and minutes, where the fog of war has never lifted entirely. For those willing to witness, Green Springs is a place of reverence and awe. The mists roll in, cavalry charges through the hills, rifles flash in night, and orders echo across fields that should be silent. The living are fleeting observers in a realm still governed by the rules of the fallen, a battlefield where time bends and the soldiers of the past continue to hold their ground. Here, in the chill of night, the ghosts of Green Springs move, ever vigilant, forever part of the land they died defending. Fort Meade, nestled in the rolling plains of Maryland, has long stood as a sentinel of history, a place where the echoes of military discipline linger far beyond the present. By day, the fort presents itself as a quiet, orderly campus, its buildings lined in neat rows, its parade grounds maintained and empty. But as dust settles, a different story unfolds, so one written not in brick and stone, but in the lingering presence of soldiers who never truly left. Visitors and night watchers alike have reported eerie phenomena that suggest the fort remains alive with spectral activity, a military post frozen in time. As the sun sinks beneath the horizon, a chill sweeps across the parade grounds. Those brave enough to walk after dark often hear the distant sound of boots striking the pavement in perfect cadence. The rhythm is unmistakably that of a drill of precision marching that cuts through the quiet night like a blade. At first, the noise seems faint, as if carried on a whispering wind, but it gradually intensifies, and the unmistakable bark of commands pierces the darkness. A attention, forward march, present arms. A echoes across empty fields, leaving visitors frozen with unease, wondering if they have stumbled into a phantom inspection. Figures begin to emerge in the shadows, faint outlines of soldiers standing at rigid attention, their uniforms blurred in the dim light. Some witnesses claim to see officers pacing in slow circles, inspecting invisible troops with eyes that seem to penetrate the soul. Their movements are deliberate, disciplined, and eerily consistent, as if no century of absence could disrupt the rigid structure of their duty. The air fills with a metallic scent of gunpowder, the subtle click of rifles being loaded, and the distant thud of boots striking the earth, all without a living soldier in sight. The Fort's buildings contribute to the haunting ambience. Barracks stand silent, yet shadows flicker across windows and doorways, as if the soldiers are still moving through the halls, preparing for a day that will never come. Lanterns float along the parade grounds, casting pale circles of light that illuminate the phantom drills. Some witnesses describe the lanterns bobbing slowly, moving in unison with the spectral soldiers as though guiding them along invisible formations. Occasionally, the faint outline of a commander appears, raising a hand to signal maneuver, and the entire parade ground seems to come alive with disciplined motion for a moment, before dissolving into emptiness. Visitors report an unsettling combination of sounds and sensations. Orders barked from unseen lips carry authority. The metallic clatter of rifles being stacked and unstacked punctuates the night, and the faint rumble of a distant horse or cannon seems to roll across the grounds. Temperature shifts dramatically, dropping in moments to a bone-chilling cold, only to rise again as if the air itself respects the presence of the dead soldiers. Some feel a gentle push or brush along the back, interpreted as invisible hands guiding the living out of the way, or perhaps simply a reminder of the strict discipline that binds these spirits. The hauntings are not merely random disturbances. They follow patterns that mimic real military routines. Observers have recounted witnessing phantom drills that replicate historical maneuvers with astonishing accuracy. Troops march in formation across the parade ground, execute turns and salutes with precision, and occasionally break into rows as though preparing for a long-forgotten inspection. The officers move with quiet authority, their commands crisp, and when a visitor approaches too closely, the figures vanish instantly, leaving only the faint glow of lantern light behind. Some suggest the spirits are locked in duty, endlessly performing their roles as soldiers. The Fort's past adds weight to the phenomena. Fort Meade has been a site of training, deployment, and ceremony for generations. The soldiers who walk the spectral grounds may be echoes of those who lived and died in service. Others carried away by time, yet unable to leave the place where discipline and honor were paramount. Locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike claim that these spirits are protective rather than malicious, patrolling the grounds with vigilance and occasionally making their presence known to ensure that the legacy of the fort is remembered. Visitors who stay late into the night often describe leaving the parade grounds with a sense of awe and unease. Even after leaving, the sounds may linger in memory, the rhythm of marching boots or the metallic click of rifles replaying in dreams. For those who witness it, Fort Meade is more than a historic city. It is a living, breathing stage for soldiers trapped between duty and eternity. Fort Meade's haunted grounds serve as a reminder of service, sacrifice, and the persistence of memory. In the darkness, the spectral soldiers march tirelessly, the lanterns floating above, rifles in hand, carrying out drills that will never end. The air vibrates with discipline, and the presence of the past feels immediate, a ghostly parade that no century can dissolve. Those who venture onto grounds at night find themselves observers to a military world that exists parallel to the Lavinga, a realm of obedience, vigilance, and honor, where the soldiers of Fort Meade continue their eternal duty. Harper's Ferry, perched where the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers meet, is a place where history clings to every hill, ridge, and riverbank. By day, the town and its surrounding battlefield are serene, with visitors walking quiet trails and gazing at historic buildings that survived centuries of conflict. But as dusk falls over the Maryland side of the battlefield, a different presence emerges, one that seems to reach across time itself. Witnesses have long reported strange sights and sounds, experiences that suggest the soldiers who once fought here are far from gone. The first signs often come as a faint rumble, distant but unmistakable, echoing off the valley walls. Cannon fire crackles through the hills, even though no reenactments or demonstrations are taking place. Those who wander the old trails report glimpsing shadowy figures along the riverbanks, standing rigid with muskets, scanning the horizon as if guarding against an enemy invisible to the living. At the Rivera's edge, the water seems to shift unnaturally in the fading light. Some visitors swear they have seen the glint of bayonets and the outline of militia men reflected in the surface, standing in formation, yet disappearing when approached. Horses, unseen but heard, trot silently through the tall grass, the thud of hooves muted but persistent, as if phantom wagons are hauling supplies to positions long since abandoned. The air carries a metallic scent, like gunpowder and blood mingling with the river mist. As night falls, the battlefield grows colder, and shadows stretch unnaturally across the ridges. Figures move with purpose, sometimes in groups, other times alone, their outlines blurred but distinctly human. The outlines of the figures become clearer, their faces set with determination, their movements deliberate and practiced. They march, crouch, and take cover in the brush, repeating the drills and maneuvers of the battle that left an indelible mark on the land. A spectral officer appears, hat-tipped, hand raised, issuing commands to troops who do not exist in the living world. Those nearby feel a sudden pressure in the air, almost as if invisible hands guide the living away from danger, or perhaps simply enforce the discipline of a long-finished war. The valley amplifies sounds in strange ways, making it seem as though the very land itself is alive and watching. A single shout or musket crack can carry for miles, making it impossible to tell where the echo ends and the origin begins. Witnesses have reported hearing orders given in quick succession, soldiers of voices shouting names, movements, and formations. Yet when they follow the sound, they find no thing but only the empty battlefield, the river silently flowing, and the hills bathed in moonlight. It is as if the land itself holds these sounds, replaying the past with eerie fidelity. Some nights, lanterns appear where the soldiers once camped, floating along the trails and riverbanks in dim, yellow light. These lights bob in rhythm with marching figures, illuminating glimpses of uniforms and muskets. Occasionally, the spectral glow lingers near the water, revealing ghostly faces etched with determination and fear. Witnesses describe a tangible sense of presence, a weight pressing down, that is equal parts reverence and warning. The soldiers are not malevolenta. They are bound to the place, their loyalty eternal, guardians of a history that refuses to fade. The terrain itself seems to guide the spirits. Old roads, now little more than dirt paths and overgrown trails, are the stage for phantom wagons and supply lines. Spectral horses follow these paths, unseen but heard, their hooves thudding lightly on the soil. The living sometimes feel the breeze shift inexplicably, or hear the creak of wagon wheels passing through brush and tree. Those who pause to observe often report a profound silence following these sounds, a quiet so deep it presses against the ears, broken only by distant whispers of orders and movement. The experience is immersive, affecting all senses. The distant cannon fire is matched by the scent of smoke, the rustle of leaves mimics the march of troops, and the air grows thick with anticipation, as if the battle is still being fought. A figure in uniform appears for a fleeting second, then dissolves into the mist. A shout, carries across the valley, then vanishes into the night. The land remembers, and the dead replay their last vigil endlessly. Locals and paranormal enthusiasts alike speak of Harper's Ferry as Maryland battlefield, as a place where the weight of history manifests in ghostly repetition. Soldiers stand eternal watch along the river. Phantom wagons traverse roads that no longer exist, and the cries of battle echo across the valleys. Soldiers stand eternal watch along the river. Phantom wagons traverse roads that no longer exist, and the cries of battle echo across the valleys. Soldiers stand eternal watch along the river. Phantom wagons traverse roads that no longer exist, and the cries of battle echo across the valleys. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. The experience is humbling, unnerving, and unforgettable. For those who witness it, the battlefield is not just a relic of Historia. It is a living memory, a place where the dead are bound to the land they once fought to defend, forever trapped by duty, loyalty, and the echoes of their final hours. Point Lookout, perched at the southern tip of Maryland where the Potomac and Chesapeake meet, is a place steeped in both history and sorrow. By day, the sandy shores and grassy fields appear peaceful, the waters lapping gently against the coastline as if time has softened the past. But after sunset, the battlefield and former prison camp reveal a far darker presence, one that lingers in the mist and the wind, visible to those who dare to watch closely. Visitors have long reported strange experiences here, from fleeting shadows to sounds that cannot be explained, all hinting at the restless spirits that remain bound to the land. The first signs often come with the fog. A thick, rolling mist rises from the shores at twilight, covering the field in a gray pall that seems to swallow sound and light alike. A thick, rolling mist rises from the shores at twilight, covering the field in a gray pall that seems to swallow sound and light alike. Covering the field in a gray pall that seems to swallow sound and light alike. Within this haze, the faint outlines of figures appear, sometimes in clusters, other times alone. Wearing uniforms frayed and dirty, the ghosts of prisoners and soldiers frozen in perpetual torment. Sometimes in clusters, other times alone. Wearing uniforms frayed and dirty, the ghosts of prisoners and soldiers frozen in perpetual torment. Wearing uniforms frayed and dirty, the ghosts of prisoners and soldiers frozen in perpetual torment. The ghosts of prisoners and soldiers frozen in perpetual torment. Some move slowly, their feet dragging, as though the weight of captivity still pulls them down. Others march with military precision, rifles slung across shoulders, faces blank yet eerily present. Auditory phenomena accompany these spectral sightings. Faint moans drift over the wind, echoes of anguish from men who died far from home. Shackles clink and rattle as if prisoners are still trying to break free from invisible chains. Some visitors hear distant shouts, muffled commands, or the sounds of a struggle, only to find the field empty when they strain their eyes. The air often carries a faint, metallic tang of blood, mingling with the saltiness of nearby rivers. At the center of the old camp, where barracks and guard posts once stood, apparitions are most frequently reported. Some witnesses describe seeing prisoners sitting in neat rows, their heads bowed as if awaiting inspection, only to vanish when approached. Others see spectral guards patrolling along invisible lines, rifles in hand, their presence at once commanding and oppressive. The boundary between the living and the dead seems thinnest here, as if the earth itself refuses to let the departed leave. Even along the waterfront, phenomena persist. Spectral boats glide silently across the misted waters, their rowers dressed in tattered uniforms, hauling unseen cargo. Lanterns flicker along the shore, casting pale light on empty sand, illuminating figures who appear to watch the living with hollow eyes. The river itself seems to pulse with memory, the ebb and flow carrying whispers of despair and longing. The river's pulse is a haunting reminder of the past. The water's edge is a place of sorrow and loss. Campfires occasionally flare up where no logs exist, revealing fleeting glimpses of faces etched with fear, exhaustion, and sorrow. The fog plays tricks on the mind. Figures appear to approach only to dissolve into nothing. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the fields, hinting at formations and movements that once existed in life but now belong only to memory. Some visitors report that when they follow the sound of moaning or footsteps, the echoes lead them back to the same spot, as though the dead are trapped in a loop, endlessly replaying their last hours. The experience is disorienting, and many feel an unshakable weight pressing down, a reminder that Point Leucida's history is not buried but alive in spirit. Those who linger through the night often feel watched. The stillness of the fog-laden camp is punctuated by the subtle impression of eyes tracking movement, or the sensation of a presence walking just behind. Some have reported cold drafts brushing against their necks or shoulders, though the wind is still. Others claim to hear whispered names, calls for help, or faint commands given in voices from another century. These encounters are fleeting but leave a lasting impression, a reminder that the land remembers every footstep, every struggle, every cry. Local lore reinforces a sense of unease. Point Lookout held thousands of Confederate prisoners in overcrowded, disease-ridden camps, many dying from exposure, illness, or despair. Soldiers on both sides perished in skirmishes nearby. It is said that the suffering left an indelible mark on the land, binding the spirits to the very soil where so many died. The apparitions are not necessarily hostile, but they are relentless. The dead are compelled to repeat their stories, to haunt the boundaries where life and death once collided, and to remind the living of the pain endured on these shores. Walking the battlefield at night, visitors often find themselves in a world suspended between past and present. Shapes move through the fog, cries drift across the water, and the earth seems to pulse with memory. Even the most skeptical feel a chill, a presence that is unmistakable and persistent. The shadows, the clinking chains, the spectral formations, they all tell the same story. A place of suffering, of confinement, of lives cut short, forever echoing across the mist. Point Lookout remains a testament to the cost of war, a landscape where the living can glimpse the echoes of the dead. The prisoner ghosts, the soldiers, the fog, the moans, the spectral lights all combine to create a haunting tableau. Here, history is never silent, and the spirits are never still. To walk these grounds at night is to step into a world where despair lingers, and the restless dead continue to inhabit the land they cannot leave, bound forever by the memories of suffering and the finality of loss. Calvert Cliffs, rising dramatically above the Chesapeake Bay in Lusby, Maryland, are serene by day, with sunlight sparkling off the water and gulls wheeling lazily above the shoreline. Yet beneath this picturesque landscape lies a history soaked in conflict and blood, a legacy that refuses to fade. During the Revolutionary War, these cliffs witnessed skirmishes between colonial militia and British forces, with troops darting among the rocky terrain and muskets cracking along the ridges. Today, the echoes of those clashes are said to remain, lingering in the midst of the trees and the very earth of the cliffs themselves. Visitors who wander the trails at dusk often report unsettling experiences, subtle reminders that some histories refuse to remain buried. The first hints of the past emerge in the fog that drifts up from the Chesapeake. As evening approaches, the mist thickens, curling around trees and rocks, muffling footsteps and distorting the familiar landscape. Within this gray veil, shapes appear as human forms that vanish when approached. Fleeting glimpses of soldiers in colonial uniforms running along the cliff edges or crouching behind outcroppings. Some witnesses have seen shadows flicker between the trees, as though formations are moving in coordination, marching toward objectives long forgotten. Sounds accompany these visual phenomena. Sharp cracks echo across the cliffs of muskets fired in the distance, though no one is present. Some report the faint smell of gunpowder, carried on the wind despite the absence of campfires or any other source. Whistles and shouted commands reach the ears of visitors, distorted and ghostly, drifting across the rocks and water. It is as if the cliffs themselves remember the orders barked centuries ago, replaying them in faint, sorrowful echoes. Footsteps are often reported where none should exist. Visitors describe feeling a sudden pressure behind them or a sensation of being counted, measured, followed by a fleeting rustle in the underbrush. Some hear the rapid pounding of boots on dirt and stone, then silence, only to discover no one was there. The cliffs have a way of erasing human presence, while leaving the impression that it was never alone, that unseen eyes are tracking each movement with precision and intent. Along the shoreline below, apparitions sometimes appear in the water's reflection. Spectral soldiers seem to move across the surface, rifles raised, faces fixed in grim determination. Others are glimpsed scaling the cliffs, as if the rocks themselves remembered their weight and effort. Lantern-like lights bob in the distance, mimicking the patrols and movements of colonial scouts, guiding no living audience but performing their silent duty. Those who observe closely sometimes catch fleeting moments of interaction at two figures meeting in the fog, exchanging an order or signal, only to dissolve into mist before comprehension can form. The cliffs themselves seem to hold memory in their jagged rocks and crevices. Trees along the trail sometimes sway with no wind, or snap as if struck by musket fire. Rocks shift slightly underfoot, just enough to make the hiker question whether the terrain itself is restless. Some visitors report feeling a cold presence on the shoulders, a fleeting chill that runs across the skin when no breeze is present. These sensations often accompany the distant sounds of Fightinga shouts, musket cracks, and whistles echoing from ridge to ridge, impossible to locate but undeniably present. Those who linger too long on the trails sometimes hear voices calling out, not malicious but urgent, as if trying to communicate instructions or warnings. The words are indistinct, carried on the wind, blending with the cries of gulls and the lapping of the water below. Shadows flit across the cliffs with unnatural speed, sometimes appearing to signal or gesture. It is said that these apparitions are the lingering spirits of soldiers who died before they could complete their duty, replaying their final orders in an eternal rehearsal. Even during the day, some visitors report a strange heaviness on the cliffs, a sensation that time itself bends over the land. The sunlight glinting off the water seems occasionally dimmed, as though history casts a shadow that even light cannot fully penetrate. The earth underfoot feels subtly uneven, as if the land remembers every fall, every march, every gunshot. Photographs occasionally reveal streaks of light or blurry figures that vanish when a lens is adjusted, hinting at a presence unseen by the naked eye. The cliff's reputation has become part of local lore. Many claim that the spirits are not malevolent but bound by memory and duty, forever replaying the moments that shaped the nation. The skirmishes, the commands, the marqués, they persist as ghostly reminders that history is never truly silent. Those who wander the cliffs are advised to remain aware of their surroundings, not just for their own safety, but in acknowledgement of the lingering watchers who have not moved on. Calvert Cliffs remains a place where the past is tangible, where the weight of history presses against the present. The shadows of soldiers, the echoes of musket fire, the cold brushes of unseen hands all form a tableau of memory and loss. Visitors who experience the cliffs at night often leave with an impression they cannot fully explain, a feeling that some eyes are always watching, counting every step, and that the Revolutionary War never truly ended here. The land holds its stories, etched into rock and mist, carried on the wind, and replayed endlessly for those willing to see and hear. Nottingham Battlefield, nestled in the quiet Maryland countryside, is a place where the past seems to press against the present. By day, the fields are calm, golden grasses swaying in the breeze, the remnants of centuries-old stone walls marking where troops once maneuvered. But as dusk approaches, the battlefield takes on a different character, one that unsettles even the most stoic visitors. Witnesses often speak of phantom lines forming in the fields, precise rows of figures moving with disciplined intent. These soldiers are dressed in tattered 18th century uniforms, faded by time but discernible in the dim light. They march, halt, pivot, and fire, endlessly repeating the drills that would have been second nature in life. Observers report feeling a subtle vibration beneath their feet, as if the earth itself remembers the stomping of boots and the cadence of orders shouted long ago. These spectral formations vanish when approached, dissolving into mist as though aware of intrusions from the living. Ghostly officers are sometimes glimpsed along the edges of the lines, standing erect with hands outstretched, giving commands that echo faintly across the fields. Their faces are obscured, blurred like a watercolor left in the rain. Yet the authority in their posture is unmistakable. They point, shout, and signal maneuvers, yet no voices carry clearly to human ears. Some visitors swear they can feel the weight of unseen scrutiny, as if the officers are evaluating the performance of invisible troops, ensuring that the discipline of the battlefield remains intact even in death. At night, the atmosphere intensifies. A low, rhythmic drumming can sometimes be heard emanating from the woods that border the field. The sound is soft at first, almost imperceptible, but it grows steadily, echoing through the trees and across the rolling terrain. The beats mimic the cadence of marching soldiers, an auditory remnant of the drills and maneuvers that once filled the air with life and tension. On nights when the moon is low, these drummings seem to carry across the entire battlefield, intertwining with the rustle of the grasses and the sighing of the wind, creating an eerie symphony that blurs the line between past and present. Occasionally, strange figures appear beyond the fields, moving through the shadows of the nearby woods. Some look like scouts, flitting from tree to tree, rifles in hand, watching unseen enemies. Others seem to be couriers, crossing invisible paths, their steps silent yet deliberate. Witnesses report a fleeting sense of being observed, a chill running down the spine as if Samania or Somthinga is marking their presence, counting their movements, silently assessing whether the living understand the gravity of the land they tread. Visitors have described moments when the battlefield seems to shift around them. A trail that led to a grove of trees one moment may appear suddenly lined with soldiers the next, their forms partially obscured by the fog that drifts off the low hills. And sounds of shouted orders or distant cannon fire may punctuate the stillness. These phenomena rarely last long, leaving only the lingering impression that the earth itself is haunted by memories too stubborn to fade. Some who linger too long report more intimate encounters. A whisper in the ear, indistinct but urgent, seems to urge caution or signal unseen danger. A gust of cold air brushes against the skin, though no wind is blowing. The grass rustles as though boots have passed, and footprints appear in areas where none could logically exist. It is as if the spirits of Nottingham Battlefield are both performers and observers, enacting routines of old while watching the living navigate their haunted grounds. Even in daylight, the battlefield retains its spectral presence. Shadows that do not match the surrounding trees can be glimpsed out of the corner of the eye. Shapes seem to rise and fall with the hills, forming lines or clusters reminiscent of soldiers in formation. Photographs occasionally reveal anomalies of blurs, streaks of light, or faint figures that vanish when viewed directly. The air carries a weight, subtle but unmistakable, a sense that the past is present and unyielding. Local lore suggests that the spirits are not malicious, but bound by duty and memory. They are the echoes of soldiers who never returned home, their identities erased by time, but their actions immortalized in the land they defended. The phantom drills, the distant drums, the spectral officers, these are reminders of the sacrifices made and the discipline maintained under pressure and peril. They are watchers of the battlefield, custodians of history, ensuring that every visitor who treads the ground understands the cost etched into every hill and hollow. For those who walk Nottingham battlefield after dark, the experience is one of awe and unease. The tall grasses whisper with the wind, the fog curls through the trees, and the ghostly formations march on endlessly. The drumming fades in and out, the officers gesture to troops unseen, and the feeling of being counted, observed, and tested never fully disappears. Nottingham battlefield is a living memory, a place where the past asserts itself, and where the long-forgotten soldiers continue their eternal drills, bound to the land that witnessed their courage and their fall. Elkridge Landing Battlefield, along the winding banks of the Patapsco River, is a place where history refuses to rest. During the War of 1812, this small stretch of land became a scene of intense skirmishes, leaving many dead and countless more wounded. Today, the fields and riverbanks are quiet by day, the murmuring of the river blending with the rustle of leaves in the wind. But as dusk approaches, the battlefield takes on a different Lithia, one that draws the attention of those sensitive to the lingering echoes of the past. Visitors often speak of phantom soldiers appearing as shadows along the riverbanks. They are seen carrying rifles, their uniforms worn and tattered as if decades of neglect have not dimmed their purpose. Some march in formation, others crouch behind rocks and sparse vegetation, poised as though anticipating an attack that never comes. Observers have described an unsettling precision in their movements. These figures act with intent and discipline, repeating maneuvers practiced long ago, unaware of the centuries that have passed. Among the phantoms, some appear to aid the fallen. Spectral hands lift invisible bodies from the ground, dragging or supporting them as though the wounded are real and their suffering must be relieved. Witnesses have reported a soft rustling and occasional indistinct groans, as if the echoes of pain still cling to the earth. The ghostly soldiers move with a purpose, but when approached, they vanish like mist, leaving only the feeling that the event of that fateful day continued to unfold, unseen yet tangible. At the Rivera S edge, strange lights sometimes appear, flickering like campfires. These spectral flames hover above the water or along the muddy banks, casting long, wavering shadows. Observers say the lights resemble the fires that soldiers may have used for signaling or warmth during the battle, but their glow is eerie and unnatural. The fires seem to mark the positions of troops, illuminating phantom movements for a moment before fading into darkness. Some have attempted to walk toward them, only to find the ground empty, the flames gone, leaving nothing but a damp, chilly wind that carries the faint scent of smoke and gunpowder. Sounds accompany the apparitions, though faint and often distorted. The sharp crack of muskets occasionally slices through the quiet, followed by the muffled thud of distant cannon fire. Orders are shouted, though the words are indistinct, carried on the wind as if the soldiers of voices are trapped in an eternal battlefield echo. Horseisa hooves can be heard stomping through the grass. Yet no living animals are present. These auditory phenomena reinforce the visual experiences, creating a sense that the past is pressed into the present. That history itself is replaying for anyone willing or unlucky enough to witness it. Some visitors have reported feeling unseen presences brushing past them or pressing against their backs, as if invisible soldiers are moving through the same spaces they occupy. A sudden chill may sweep the area, leaving goosebumps even in warm weather. The air feels heavy, laden with centuries of fear, determination, and sorrow. The Patapsco River itself seems alive with memory. Those who linger often describe a sense of being watched, measured, and evaluated by forces beyond comprehension, as if the phantom soldiers are aware of their intrusion into the sacred repetition of history. At twilight, faint ripples appear along the banks with no wind, and shadows glimmer in the water that vanish when observed directly. Some report hearing distant cries or the clang of metal, suggesting fallen soldiers attempting to rise, to continue fighting, or to signal comrades across the river. The spectral reflections in the water often appear distorted, ghostly, as if the river itself serves as a portal for memories too heavy to remain buried. Even during daylight hours, the battlefield retains its aura of unrest. Visitors speak of the feeling of unease, of shadows that seem to move in the corner of the eye, and of sounds that dissolve the moment attention is focused on them. Photographs occasionally capture anomalies as streaks of light, blurs, or faint human shapiza that do not appear in real time. The land seems to remember, holding the energy of conflict like a quiet wound that never fully heals. Local legend suggests that the soldiers are trapped between history and eternity. The skirmish they fought at Elk Ridge Landing was brief in human terms, but in spirit, it persists endlessly. They are compelled to reenact the battle, bound by duty, fear, and unfinished business. The fires, the cries, the marques, they are repetitions of the moments when life and death hung in precarious balance. Those who witness these phenomena are not intruding on Astoria. They are observing its spectral remnants, the echoes of men who cannot leave the field that claimed them. For those who venture to Elk Ridge Landing at dusk, the experience is humbling and haunting. Phantom soldiers march across the fields. Spectral fires burn along the banks. The cries of unseen wounded echo across the Patapsco. The past is not silent here. It is alive, replaying, insistent. Every rustle in the grass, every flicker of light, every shadow on the river mirrors the events of that long-ago day, ensuring that the memory of the Batley and the souls who fought Ida remains forever etched into the land. Maryland Heights, rising above the confluence of the Potomac and Shenandoah rivers in Frederick County, holds a legacy steeped in conflict and endurance. During the Civil War, this strategic ridge witnessed some of the most intense fighting in the Harper's Ferry campaign. Soldiers battled over its slopes, digging trenches, operating artillery, and maneuvering infantry under the watchful eyes of officers. Today, the landscape appears serene, with rolling hills and forested ridges, but those who linger after sunset speak of a presence that refuses to rest. Visitors often report strange phenomena beginning as the sun dips behind the distant hills. Shadows move along the ridges in ways that defy the natural patterns of light. Dark, human-shaped forms march in formation, some carrying rifles while others crouch behind rocky outcrops, crouching or pointing toward unseen enemies. Those who pause along the trails where the figures are soldiers frozen in action, repeating maneuvers with precision that suggests discipline beyond death. Approaching these shadows often causes them to vanish, leaving only the sensation that the land itself is alive with history. Cannon fire is another frequently reported occurrence. Witnesses describe sudden, thunderous blasts that echo across the valley, yet produce no visible smoke or recoil. Sometimes, the sound is accompanied by a faint glow along the ridgeline, the ghostly flash of artillery fire suspended in time. Some hikers have claimed they could see ghostly artillery crews moving with practiced efficiency, limbering cannon, loading shells, and signaling each other, all without sound or substance. The effect is so vivid that for a brief moment, the line between history and the present seems to blur. Auditory phenomena do not end with cannons. Commands and shouted orders echo across the heights, sometimes indistinct, sometimes sharp as a commanding officer stands nearby. The voices carry urgency and authority, fading only when the observer attempts to locate the source. Even when no living person is present, the wind seems to carry the cadence of marching, the shuffle of boots on dirt, the rhythmic stamping of soldiers moving in formation. For those who pause and listen carefully, it is as if the ridge itself speaks, recounting the events of that long-ago battle in hushed, eerie detail. Some visitors report more intimate encounters with the spirits of the fallen. Shapes that resemble individual soldiers appear briefly at the edge of their vision, crouching over invisible wounded comrades or raising rifles to phantom targets. Occasionally, a sudden cold draft brushes against the neck or shoulder, accompanied by the faint scent of gunpowder and earth turned by countless footsteps. The sensation is one of being observed and measured, as though the soldiers are aware of the living intruding on their eternal vigilance. At dusk, Maryland Heights seems to take on a life of its own. The trees sway as if moved by invisible hands, and the ridgelines cast shadows that twist unnaturally with the fading light. Some hikers report glimpses of ghostly lanterns bobbing along hidden paths, illuminating soldiers amid action, only to vanish when looked at directly. The experience is disorienting, the battlefield transformed into a liminal space where time folds, where the past and present coexist in uneasy harmony. The terrain itself seems to hold memory. Stones worn by centuries of erosion, ridgelines shaped by the conflict, and the remains of old fortifications resonate with the energy of those who fought here. Some visitors claim to feel pressure on the ground beneath their feet, as if the ridge itself is filled with the weight of history and the presence of countless spirits. Whispers rise from the grass, unintelligible but insistent, echoing the orders and conversations of soldiers long dead. The air is heavy with the past, the silence punctuated by fleeting sounds that vanish the moment one focuses on them. Many local legends speak of the spirits as protectors of Maryland Heights. Though the war ended over a century ago, these spectral soldiers are said to remain, guarding the ridge as they did in life. Some claim that anyone who attempts to disturb the land or disrespect its memory will feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them, the silent scrutiny of those who never left. The ridge is a liminal boundary, a place where the living glimpse the unresolved struggle of those who gave their lives here, caught between history and eternity. For those who venture to Maryland Heights after dark, the experience is humbling, sometimes terrifying, yet unforgettable. Shadows march along the ridges, ghostly artillery flashes illuminate the hillside, and commands echo from officers long dead. Ghostly artillery flashes illuminate the hillside, and commands echo from officers long dead. And commands echo from officers long dead. The presence is constant, as if the ridge itself refuses to yield its memory. As if the ridge itself refuses to yield its memory. Every footstep, every rustle of leaves, every whisper in the wind carries the weight of the past. Maryland Heights is more than a landscape. It is a sentinel, haunted and eternal, where the spirits of soldiers continue their vigil, protecting the heights even in death. Monocacy Junction, lying just beyond the more well-known Monocacy battlefield in Frederick, Maryland, hold a quiet, eerie reputation. By day, the junction is a simple crossroads, the railroad tracks cutting to the rolling fields, a place where the hum of modern life seems to wash away the echoes of past. But as dusk falls and the light fades, the area transforms. A heavy fog often rolls along the tracks, settling low over the fields, and where it comes an unmistakable sense that history refuses to rest. Those who linger after dark speak of strange sights, sounds, and sensations, as though the battlefield has extended its spectral reach into the junction itself. Witnesses first notice the fog. It moves unnaturally, curling and shifting as though aware of those who watch it. Shapes sometimes emerge within Ida horseback riders who vanish if approached, wagons carrying invisible cargo, or lines of infantry advancing silently along paths long abandoned. The fog is more than a natural phenomenon. It is a veil between the living and the past, a conduit through which the spirits of soldiers continue their vigil. Many who walk the tracks at night report hearing the steady clip-clop of hooves on dirt and the distant rumble of wagon wheels. Yet no horses or wagons are visible. At times, flashes of rifles pierce the mist, brief and startling, accompanied by the distant crack of musket fire. The sounds are layered and chaotic, as though a battle is simultaneously unfolding in multiple points of the junction. Those who pause feel the presence of the Sodiersa, an almost tactile sensation of bodies moving nearby, their cold breath brushing against the skin of the living. The spectral figures themselves are often glimpsed at the edges of vision. Cavalry patrols glide along the tracks in formation, their horses low in the mist, riders rigid and silent. Infantrymen march between the fog banks, bayonets glinting faintly in the pale moonlight. Wagons loaded with phantom supplies roll along invisible paths, led by ghostly drivers who vanish when approached. Some witnesses describe seeing officers signaling commands, pointing across the fields, and disappearing in mid-step, leaving the fog itself rippling as though shaken by unseen energy. Auditory phenomena are as unsettling as the visual. Orders shouted in the distance echo through the night, carried by the fog and fading just when the listener attempts to locate their source. The sound of marching, rhythmic and deliberate, is punctuated by occasional rifle cracks and the soft clang of equipment being adjusted. Some say that the junction carries a sense of urgency, as though the soldiers are preparing for a battle that will never arrive, forever training, marching, and readying themselves in a loop that time cannot break. Physical sensations often accompany these experiences. Walkers describe sudden chills that move along their spine, brief gusts of wind that come from nowhere, and the feeling of invisible hands brushing past them, as if soldiers are moving directly through the living. The ground sometimes seems to pulse underfoot. Subtle vibrations that echo the past exertions of heavy boots, wagons, and cannon. Even the smell of gunpowder, faint but unmistakable, occasionally drifts on the night air, grounding the visions in an eerie realism. Locals tell stories of those who try to follow the soldiers or approach the spectral wagons. Often, these individuals feel an unseen barrier, a line they cannot cross, and the apparitions vanish before direct contact. Some who linger too long report dizziness, disorientation, or an overwhelming sense of being watched. The fog thickens in their presence, shrouding the junction and obscuring familiar paths, as if the ghosts themselves are protecting their endless parade. Despite the fear, there is a strange reverence in the phenomenon. The soldiers at Monocacy Junction are not malevolent. They are disciplined, repeating the motions of their duties, guarding the tracks, and marching as if the battle were still to come. Visitors sense that these spirits are bound to the place by loyalty and duty. Trapped in a moment of history they cannot leave behind. They are endlessly vigilant, preparing for a fight that will never happen, patrolling the junction in eternal readiness. Monocacy Junction thus exists as a threshold between the past and the present. During the day, it is a quiet railroad crossing, a simple part of the landscape. But at night, under the cover of fog, it becomes a stage where history is replayed in spectral form. Cavalry patrols, phantom wagons, marching infantry, and the distant flashes of rifles create a scene both haunting and mesmerizing. Those who witness it leave changed, carrying with them a sense of the weight of history, the presence of the soldiers who refuse to leave, and the knowledge that some battles echo far longer than the living can imagine. The spectral soldiers vanish, the wagons disappear, and the sounds fade into silence. Yet the memory lingers of the clatter of boots, the flash of rifle fire, an impression of lives caught between duty and eternity. Monocacy Junction remains a place where the dead march endlessly, preparing for a battle that will never end, a haunting reminder that some corners of history never truly rest. Fort Howard, perched at the mouth of the Patapsco River in Baltimore, was once a critical coastal defense installation. Its stone walls, artillery placements, and barracks have long since fallen into quiet disuse. Yet the fort's history seems unwilling to rest. Those who visit after dark report a series of unexplained phenomena that suggest the soldiers who once defended these shores may still be on duty, patrolling, training, and maintaining a presence invisible to the untrained eye. As night descends, the fort transforms. A heavy, almost tangible stillness settles over parade grounds, broken only by occasional creaks from aging wood or distant water lapping against the riverbank. But soon, more unsettling events emerge. Witnesses speak of sudden, inexplicable drops in temperature, cold gusts that brush against the skin, and the smell of gunpowder lingering in the air despite the absence of any live firing. It is as if the atmosphere itself remembers the countless drills, parades, and battles that once took place on this ground. Spectral figures appear along the ramparts, often described as soldiers in period uniforms, silhouetted against the faint glow of the moon. They march with precise steps, rifles slung across shoulders, their movements deliberate and silent. Some visitors have reported seeing the soldiers pause at the edge of the fortifications, scanning the horizon, before resuming their endless patrol. They vanish when approached, leaving behind only the faint imprint of footsteps or the lingering scent of oil and gunpowder. Along the parade grounds, mysterious lights float just above the stone walls, bobbing gently as though carried by invisible hands. These lights have been interpreted as lanterns once carried by sentries, now animated by the echoes of history. Some witnesses swear they see shadows moving alongside the lights, figures pacing in formation, practicing drills that were once part of daily military life. The sight is both eerie and mesmerizing, a ghostly pageant frozen in time yet alive in its own way. The sounds are as haunting as the visuals. Ghostly commands echo through the stone corridors, shouted by officers long dead. The rhythm of marching feet sometimes vibrates through the ground, faint but persistent. Visitors have reported hearing rifles being loaded and the faint clatter of bayonets striking the parade ground, though no physical weapon is present. On some nights, the echoes seem to crescendo into a phantom inspection, soldiers lining up, being counted and reviewed by an unseen commanding officer. The fort seems to replay its routines endlessly, the living merely spectators to a ghostly reenactment. Some who linger near the barracks report other phenomena. Doors creak open and shut without cause. Cold spots move through empty rooms, and the faint murmur of voices drifts through the hallways. Occasionally, the sound of boots pacing on wooden floors or soldiers whispering orders can be heard just beyond comprehension, as though the spirits are speaking a language partially remembered by the earth itself. Even those who do not see the apparitions often feel their presence, a weight in the air, a subtle pressure that follows them from room to room. Witnesses describe an uncanny discipline in the hauntings. The soldiers are not chaotic or menacing. Their actions follow patterns, as if still obeying commands of a strict military routine. Spectral guards patrol along ramparts, return to corners and posts they once manned. Lanterns bob in the same paths each night. The ghostly drills and commands repeat with unwavering regularity, suggesting the spirits are bound by duty, continuing their service in death as they did in life. The fort's cannons and artillery emplacements, though silent and rusted in the present, sometimes seem to awaken in the minds of those who visit. Some report seeing faint flashes where the guns have been, or hearing the echo of cannon fire rolling across the river. The sounds are distant, muffled, yet unmistakable, leaving visitors with a sense that the fort itself remembers every battle, every defense, and every soldier who once moved across its grounds. Visitors have often described leaving the fort in a daze, carrying the sensation of history pressing upon them. The combination of sights, sounds, and sensations is overwhelming, a reminder that Fort Howard is more than stone and earth. It is a place where the echoes of duty, discipline, and sacrifice persist, a theater where the ghosts of soldiers continue to perform their watch, unmoved by time. As dawn approaches, the fog of night lifts, the spectral figures fade, and the temperatures stabilize. The parade grounds return to silence, the floating lights vanish, and the echoes of gunpowder and marching feet dissolve. Yet the memory lingers in those who have witnessed it. They leave the fort knowing that somewhere along the ramparts, invisible sentries continue their patrol, that the echoes of long-dead soldiers are forever bound to the stones and grounds of Fort Howard. Even in emptiness, the fort lived visa a sentinel not just of the river, but of history and the restless souls who never left. Patapsco Battlefield, near Ellicott City, is a quiet stretch of Maryland woods, yet its serene appearance hides a turbulent past. During the War of 1812, this site witnessed fierce skirmishes, small yet decisive clashes between American militia and British forces. Though it lacks the fame of larger battlefields, the memories of violence, fear, and bravery linger, etched into the land itself. Modern visitors often remark on a sense of weight in the air, an almost tangible presence of those who fought and fell here. As dusk settles over the trees, the atmosphere shifts. A mist creeps along the forest floor, winding between gnarled roots and low-lying brush. Visitors have reported sudden chills, as if the temperature itself remembers the soldiers of fear and resolve. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, sounds begin to emerge, the distant beat of drums, rhythmic and methodical, echoing through the woods. The sound is faint but steady, a heartbeat of history that seems to guide invisible troops along hidden paths. Phantom lines of militia have been spotted moving between the trees. Witnesses describe the spectral figures as wearing early 19th century uniforms, rifles slung at their sides, marching with precision. The soldiers' movements are deliberate, their formation intact, as though the skirmish is still unfolding for an audience that cannot interfere. The flashes of musket fire sometimes appear in the shadows, brief and bright, followed by faint echoes of gunpowder and the metallic clatter of equipment. Voices add to the eerie scene. Commands shouted across the battlefield are orders to advance, hold, or retreat carry with them an unnatural resonance, bouncing between trees and across open fields. Some visitors swear they hear their names called, though they are alone. The voices are never threatening, yet their suddenness is enough to startle even the most confident. Every shout, every whisper seems bound to land, an imprint of urgency and fear from soldiers long dead. The battlefield itself bears signs of spectral activity. Along the narrow paths, faint impressions of boots and hoof prints appear in soft earth, vanishing if approached too closely. Lantern-like lights float among the trees, illuminating glimpses of soldiers moving silently through the fog. Some claim to see officers gesturing, pointing toward hidden enemy lines, while the men respond with unquestioning precision, their forms partially transparent, fading in and out of view. It is a living tableau of a fight that never truly ended. Sounds of musket loading and bayonets clashing are sometimes audible to those who linger late into the evening. These noises are precise, almost ritualistic, as if the ghosts are practicing their craft or reliving a single crucial engagement over and over. Occasionally, a cannon blast echoes faintly, reverberating to the hills in a manner that startles newcomers. There is a weight to the sound, a gravity that suggests both honor and tragedy. Visitors report a sense of guidance, almost like being observed. Paths that appear solid underfoot sometimes feel unstable, as if the spirits themselves are ensuring no one strays too far or steps where a soldier once fell. The forest seems alive in a way beyond natural movement. The rustle of leaves, the bending of branches, the whisper of wind to the canopy all combine create an uncanny harmony with the ghostly drills and movements. Even in daylight, the battlefield maintains its spectral presence. The trees cast long, distorted shadows, and visitors sometimes glimpse figures in the periphery of men in uniform pausing mid-step, vanishing when looked at directly. Sound of commands, muffled but persistent, sometimes drift from the tree-line. Some say that walking the battlefield is like stepping into a living memory, the spirits replaying their final moments in quiet dedication. The ghosts are not violent, nor are they aggressive. They are disciplined and orderly, bound by duty even beyond death. They march, they fire, they respond to orders, yet they leave the living untouched. It is as if the spirits of Patapsco battlefield remain to remind visitors of the sacrifices made, of the cost of conflict, and the courage of those who stood in the face of overwhelming odds. As night deepens, the fog thickens, and the drums, voices, and marching fade into the distance. The spectral lights vanish, leaving the battlefield eerily quiet. Those who leave carry with them a sense of having witnessed something impossible, yet undeniably a glimpse of history, replayed by the soldiers who never left. The forest settles, but the echoes remain, whispering through the trees that Patapsco battlefield is never truly empty, and that some soldiers continue to guard these woods, caught forever between history and eternity. Greenmount Battlefield, perched on the outskirts of Baltimore, carries the weight of history in every ridge and hollow. During the Civil War, this hilly terrain was the scene of skirmishes and engagements that claimed the lives of countless soldiers. Today, the land appears peaceful, with green slopes stretching under the morning sun, yet those who linger sense something more. As twilight approaches, the hills take on a different character. Visitors often remark on sudden chills and the faint scent of gunpowder when no battle is being reenacted. Along the ridges, shadows appear to shift unnaturally, and the soft rustling of leaves sometimes mimics the march of countless feet. On some evenings, the sound of distant hooves echoes through the valley, as if phantom cavalry patrols the terrain, their presence unseen yet unmistakable. Riders in tattered uniforms appear and vanish along the slopes, silhouettes fleeting in the fading light. The infantry, too, makes itself known. Dawn often brings reports of ghostly drills, with figures aligning in neat ranks, rifles resting on shoulders, and officers giving orders that dissolve into silence. The movements are precise, disciplined, and eerily methodical. Some visitors have described watching the soldiers pause mid-step, glance toward the tree-line, and continue marching without acknowledging the living. The sounds of commands are faint but clear, carried on the wind as if whispered directly into the ears of those nearby. Small, spectral flames burn without smoke, illuminating the faces of soldiers frozen in time. Some witnesses report the smell of cooked rations, the clatter of utensils, and hushed conversations, though approaching the fires always reveals empty clearings. The apparitions seem to hold their vigil, a nightly routine that had continued long after the living departed. Among the most persistent legends of Greenmount Battlefield is that of a lone drummer boy. Even in death, his rhythm continues to echo through the valley, faint but insistent. Some claim the beat is first heard as a distant tapping, like raindrops on a tin roof, growing louder as one approaches the ridge. The cadence is steady and haunting, guiding phantom soldiers to maneuvers or perhaps leading lost souls toward the peace denied to them in life. Visitors report a feeling of being observed as they walk the trails. Paths that appear solid sometimes feel uneven, as if an invisible presence is ensuring no one strays too far from the historical route. The rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, and the sigh of the wind all contribute to a sense that the land itself is aware of every step taken upon it. Some describe sudden drops in temperature, prickling sensations along the skin, or fleeting glimpses of shadows that vanish when looked at directly. Even in the daylight hours, the battlefield seems to retain the echoes of the past. Officer silhouettes sometimes appear among the trees, giving silent orders to troops who respond in ghostly unison. Horses' heads flash briefly along the ridges, their riders mounted and attentive, before fading into mist. The sounds of gunfire and the clink of equipment are occasional and unpredictable, startling those unprepared for them. These phenomena are not violent or threatening, but they are persistent, a constant reminder that history lingers where blood was once shed. The ghosts are disciplined and respectful, bound by duty even beyond death. The sense of solemnity is pervasive. They march, they drill, they hold their positions, but they interact with the living only through sight and sound, leaving no one harmed. Some visitors describe feeling guided by invisible hands, directed along safe paths, or led to points of historical significance. The land itself seems to enforce a memory of what occurred, a living monument made more tangible by the presence of spirits. As night deepens, the mist thickens and the sounds fade, leaving the battlefield quiet once more. The phantoms withdraw to ridges, trees, and spectral campfires, leaving only traces of their presence behind. Yet the echoes remain in the ears and eyes of those who linger too long. The rhythmic drumbeat, the faint shuffle of boots, the glimmer of a rider disappearing into darkness. Greenmount Battlefield is never truly empty. The soldiers who died here, guided by the steady hand of the drummer boy, remain bound to the hills and valleys, caught between duty and eternity, ensuring that the memory of their service endures, heard and seen by anyone willing to witness it. Sassafras Battlefield, tucked along the banks of Sassafras Creek in Cecil County, seems peaceful on the surface. The creek winds lazily through fields and trees, and the air is often thick with the scent of damp earth and pine. Yet those who linger past sunset quickly sense that the land carries more than the quiet hum of nature. Here, the echoes of Revolutionary War skirmish linger, etched into the soil, the trees, and the very mist that rolls along the creek at dusk. Visitors to Sassafras Battlefield often describe the first signs as subtle: a sudden drop in temperature, the faint scent of gunpowder on the breeze, or a rustle of leaves where no wind blows. The faint scent of gunpowder on the breeze, or a rustle of leaves where no wind blows. Or a rustle of leaves where no wind blows. As night falls, the sounds of musket fire rise, distant but distinct, crackling across the fields in irregular bursts. The shots are sometimes followed by the snap of twigs, the unmistakable march of boots across uneven ground. Those who look toward the creek often see shadows moving in the low light of figures in Continental Army uniforms, rifles slung across their shoulders, advancing in formation before vanishing when approached. The creek itself seems alive with the memory of battle. Ripples disturb the glassy surface as if unseen soldiers are moving through the water. Occasionally, a flag appears along the bank, its fabric waving in a breeze that does not touch the surrounding trees. Some witnesses claim to have seen these flags rise in the earth, held aloft by spectral hands, fluttering in patterns that signal orders or rallying cries long forgotten. The figures that accompany them are disciplined and deliberate, marching in lines, halting, and signaling to each other as though the battle continues in an invisible theater. At times, the battlefield is shrouded in mist. Lantern-like glows appear among the trees, hovering over locations where skirmishes once raged. These ghostly lights illuminate soldiers crouched in imagined cover, bayonets raised, their faces intent yet expressionless. The sounds of whispered commands, shouted orders, and the clash of steel reach the ears of those nearby, carried on the wind in chilling clarity. The air feels thick with tension, and many report a sense of being watched, the invisible eyes of soldiers tracking their movements across the fields. The spirits of Sassafras battlefield are not hostile, but they are unyielding. Visitors often speak of feeling guided along paths, as if invisible hands are nudging them to safe areas or historical vantage points. The soldiers appear bound to land, endlessly fulfilling the duty they could not complete in life. Some have described sudden pushes or brushes from behind, gentle but insistent, directing them along the old troop lines or away from low areas where the dead once fell. It is as though the battlefield itself enforces the memory of the skirmish, refusing to release the soldiers from the terrain that defined their last moments. Spectral officers are sometimes glimpsed issuing orders to troops who respond without hesitation. Their movements precise, synchronized, and eerily deliberate. Cavalry shadows occasionally appear along tree lines, charging briefly before dissolving into mist. Visitors report the scent of smoke and gunpowder lingering in the air long after the visual phenomena vanish. Campfires, or what appear to be them, glow faintly along the creek, illuminating figures crouched or kneeling as though preparing for attack or tending to the wounded. Approaching these areas reveals only empty ground, but the presence remains palpable. Sounds of battle are most pronounced at dusk and just before dawn. Distant musket fire, the pounding of boots, and muffled cries seem to emerge in the earth itself. The mist thickens, curling to the trees and along the creek, and shadows lengthen unnaturally. Lanterns flicker faintly in the distance, illuminating moments frozen in Tamiya's soldiers aiming, advancing, retreating, to all caught in an eternal loop of duty and survival. Even in daylight, Sassafras battlefield holds a strange energy. Visitors walking the trails often sense the ground beneath them vibrating subtly with the echo of past footsteps. Some hear murmurs or feel the prickling sensation of unseen eyes following their movements. The flags on the banks appear in peripheral vision, rising and dipping as if invisible hands still grasp them. The land itself feels aware, resonating with the stories of courage, fear, and loss etched into every hillock and hollow. By nightfall, the mist deepens, the musket fire fades to faint echoes, and the glowing lanterns retreat into shadows. Yet the spirits remain, guardians of battlefield that has not forgotten them. Phantom lines of soldiers march silently along the ridge's shadows, crossing the water, the flags still waving, and the whispered commands lingering in the wind. Where the living witness fleeting moments of history, replayed endlessly, and the soldiers remain bound to the land they once fought to defend, eternally vigilant along the banks of the creek. Eternally vigilant along the banks of the creek. Boonesboro battlefield, nestled in the rolling hills of Washington County, seems serene during the day. Yet, as dusk approaches, the air takes on a heavier quality. There is a sense that the land remembers, that every ridge and hollow holds echoes of a violent past. Here, during the Civil War, fierce skirmishes left soldiers dead and wounded, and locals say that the battlefield has never entirely released them. Visitors often report the first signs of the unseen long before night fully falls. A sudden chill may sweep across the fields, though no wind stirs the trees. Leaves rustle along trails with no visible cause, and distant sounds of twigs snapping. Faint drum beats, the clatter of a visa reach the ears. Leaves rustle along trails with no visible cause, and distant sounds of twigs snapping. Faint drum beats, the clatter of a visa reach the ears. Those who look toward the ridges sometimes catch glimpses of shadowy figures in tattered uniforms, rifles slung across their shoulders. Those who look toward the ridges sometimes catch glimpses of shadowy figures in tattered uniforms, rifles slung across their shoulders. They move deliberately, marching in lines, only to fade into the mist when approached. Those who look toward the ridges sometimes catch glimpses of shadowy figures in tattered uniforms, rifles slung across their shoulders. They move deliberately, marching in lines, only to fade into the mist when approached. The battlefield is alive with phantom activity. On quiet nights, the air carries the muted screams of the wounded, cries that seem to originate from the very soil. On quiet nights, the air carries the muted screams of the wounded, cries that seem to originate from the very soil. Some visitors describe feeling invisible pressure as if brushed past by moving troops, the ghostly soldiers passing within inches but leaving no trace. The sensation is unnerving, a reminder that the soldiers may be endlessly reliving the chaos of that fateful day. The ridges, hills, and narrow passes seem to guide their movements, forcing the living to witness history in its rawest form. Spectral officers are sometimes seen directing the movements of these invisible troops. Commands are shouted, sharp and urgent, though no living voice answers. Soldiers fall in line, halt, or kneel as though obeying orders, performing a ritual that no human has seen in over a century. On some nights, the sound of gunfire echoes faintly, musket reports snapping across the valley, followed by the soft clatter of falling gear. Lantern-like glows hover along the fields, illuminating brief, frozen moments of battle. A cavalry charge, a soldier helping a wounded comrade, a flag rising and dipping in response to phantom commands. The sensation of presence is pervasive. Visitors walking the trails report a constant awareness of being watched, of unseen eyes tracking their movements across the battlefield. Some feel an almost magnetic pull, as if the land itself is drawing them into the march, into the endless cycle of combat replayed by the spirits. Those who linger too long sometimes admit to fleeting moments of compulsion, imagine themselves moving in step with the phantom soldiers, their own steps merging with the echoes of history. It is as if the battlefield does not distinguish between living and dead. All who remain too long are briefly absorbed into its memory. Mist often drifts along the ridges and fields, thickening as night falls. Within its tendrils, shadows seem to take on the shapes of infantry, horses, and flags. The lanterns, dim and wavering, flicker as if signaling commands from invisible hands. Approaching these shapes proves futile, leaving only the chill of the air and the echo of muffled cries. In the darkest areas of the battlefield, some visitors report sudden drops in temperature so severe that breath becomes visible, even on warm nights. It is as though the land itself is exhaling the sorrow and fear of the soldiers who once fought here. The ridges of Boonesboro are alive with movement after sunset. Cavalry shadows gallop along tree lines, their hooves silent on the ground. Sounds of orders barked, drums rolling, and musket fire continue in an endless loop, a replay of duty and desperation. Even the softest footfalls of the living seem to echo strangely here, blending with the ghosts of rhythm, making it difficult to distinguish the present from the past. Visitors also report moments of eerie stillness. A soldier might appear frozen mid-step on a ridge, eyes seemingly fixed on some unseen objective, while the air hums with tension. These frozen figures are occasionally accompanied by glowing campfires along the field edges, illuminating groups of soldiers crouched or attending to invisible wounds. Attempting to approach or touch these scenes only reveals empty ground, yet the feeling of presence persists, as if the battlefield itself is memory. The land is saturated with the energy of those who fought and died here, and their presence is both protective and insistent. Ghostly soldiers march without pause. Cries and orders echo in the still air, and the living may feel a subtle, irresistible pull to join the phantom procession. It is a place where history is not only remembered but lived again, moment by spirits who refuse to leave the hills, fields, and ridges of Boonesboro, forever caught in the endless cadence of war. Falling Waters Battlefield, tucked along the western Maryland riverbanks, holds a quiet but relentless energy. By day, the landscape seems serene, rolling hills, dense trees, and the gentle flow of the Potomac River. Yet, as twilight settles, The air grows thick with tension, and visitors often feel the oppressive weight of history pressing down upon them. Here, during the Revolutionary War, soldiers fought fiercely in skirmishes whose echoes have never fully faded. Locals insist that the spirits of those who fell that day remain, bound to the land by duty, memory, and unfinished orders. Witnesses often first notice subtle signs: a faint pop in the air resembling musket fire, ripples on the river with no breeze, shadows flitting across the tree line, cannon blasts roll from distant ridges. The smell of gunpowder seems to drift faintly on the wind. Orders shouted in languages both familiar and foreign. Command that vanish when they strain to locate the source. Some swear they felt invisible forces pressing against them, as if the ghosts were aligning troops or signaling movement across the uneven terrain. As night falls, the riverbanks take on a spectral quality. Cavalry shadows ride silently along the banks, hooves striking the ground with sounds that never reach the ears fully. Infantry lines march through mist and moonlight, disappearing and reappearing like visions in a half-remembered dream. Visitors who attempt to approach find nothing but empty grass, yet the feeling of presence remains a constant reminder that the dead are still here, reliving a battle that history has recorded, but the spirits themselves have never left. The battlefield seems to play out moments of its bloody past repeatedly. A cannon flashes along a distant ridge, then rolls silently into mist. A musket flares in the trees, and a shadowed figure drops to the ground, attending to an invisible wound. Commands are barked sharply, though no lips move. Orders are repeated over and over in a chorus of spectral voices. Visitors report a growing unease, as though the land itself wishes to fold them into the parade of ghosts. Fog frequently drifts along the river, thickening as midnight approaches. Within the mist, shadows move with purpose. Lantern glows bob up and down like signals across the water. Soldiers appear in clusters, performing maneuvers with precision, yet vanish when one approaches. There are accounts of seeing phantom wagons trundling along the banks, carrying supplies for men who have long since died. The mist is a veil between the living and the dead, through which the unfinished battle continues to play out moment by spectral moment. Visitors often feel a profound coldness as the battlefield grows darker, a chill that penetrates clothing and bone. It is accompanied by the faint smell of smoke and iron, as though gunpowder and blood still linger in the soil. The sounds of the postas' shouts, marching feet, the clink of bayonets echo across the terrain, layering themselves over the natural sounds of river and wind. Some have claimed to feel unseen hands brush against their shoulders, guiding or warning them, urging them to step aside, or perhaps to join the procession briefly. Along the hillsides, ghostly officers are sometimes seen surveying their troops. Their figures are rigid, precise, commanding, but entirely ethereal. They gesture with invisible hands, issuing orders to soldiers who cannot hear them, who march and respond, creating a ghostly ballet of strategy and warfare. In certain spots, the ground seems to hum faintly, resonating with the energy of the conflict, as though the earth itself remembers each footstep, each volley, and each life lost. The battlefield is alive with memory, a place where the dead do not rest, and the living cannot escape the weight of the past. The river itself plays a role in the haunting. Shadows move across its surface, reflecting figures that vanish when touched by moonlight. Some visitors report seeing the glint of bayonets or the flash of musket powder mirrored in the water. Phantom footsteps splash through the shallows, yet the ripples fade as though no one has passed. Lantern lights appear on distant banks, illuminating tiny details of the soldiers' uniforms and flags, only to vanish in an instant. The effect is both mesmerizing and unsettling, a reminder that the battle here is neither forgotten nor complete. Falling Waters Battlefield is a place where history lingers with a spectral insistence. The soldiers who fought and died remain tethered to the riverbanks, bound by unfinished duty and the chaos of battle. Cannon fire, musket flashes, lanterns, and marching figures replay endlessly. Visitors leave with the weight of unseen eyes upon them, footsteps echoing long after they depart, and the sense that the land itself will continue its vigil, invisible yet eternal, until the last soldier has finally found resta, which may never come. Braddock Heights, rising sharply above Frederick County, carries a weight of history that seems almost tangible. By day, the ridge appears serene, its rolling hills dotted with trees and open meadows, a place for hikers and history enthusiasts to wander. Yet as dusk falls, the air changes, thickening with a presence that is both unseen and undeniable. For centuries, this ridge witnessed the clashes of men during the French and Indian War, and later conflicts added layers of turmoil. Those who walk these hills after dark often report experiences that defy explanation, as if the land itself remembers every command shouted, every cannon fired, and every life lost. Visitors frequently notice the first signs in subtle ways: a chill in the air that seems to follow them along the path, a sudden snap of a twig where no one has walked, or a low murmur carried on the wind. These are often the prelude to more vivid phenomena. Silhouettes of soldiers appear on the crest of the hills, marching in formation with precision that is uncanny. Their boots make no sound, yet the ground beneath them seems to carry the memory of countless steps. They move as if following orders given long ago, their eyes fixed forward, rifles at the ready, their faces etched with determination and fatigue. Phantom artillery is one of the most unsettling aspects of Braddock Heights hauntings. Visitors report flashes of light in the distance, followed by explosions that reverberate across the ridge. The sound is real enough to make the heart race, yet no cannons or weaponry are present. Sometimes, the smoke of gunpowder seems to drift faintly along the hills, carrying with it a scent of iron and charred earth. Those who have lingered too long describe a strange vibration underfoot, as if the ridge itself is resonating with the echoes of battles fought centuries ago. Whispers of strategies and commands are frequently reported. Faint, urgent voices seem to rise from the hillsides, speaking in languages and military terms long forgotten. Some hikers claim to hear a commanding officer giving orders to troops they cannot see, or voices debating the best approach to an unseen enemy. These murmurs are often fleeting, disappearing when one strains to understand them, leaving only an eerie silence and the feeling that the ridge itself is alive with memory. The ridge seems to play out moments from its past repeatedly. A flash of a sword catches the eye, only to vanish when approached. Some visitors have glimpsed entire battalions advancing across the fields, their movements deliberate, coordinated, and completely ethereal. It is as though the ghosts are reenacting the battles endlessly, trapped in precise moments where history and tragedy intersect. Even the floor of Braddock Heights seems touched by its past. Trees sway with no breeze, and leaves rustle despite calm air. Small depressions in the grass appear as though soldiers have knelt there, praying, waiting, or aiming their rifles. Some hikers have reported sudden drops in temperature along certain paths, a chill that cannot be explained by weather, accompanied by the faint feeling of being watched. Shadows seem to move independently, slipping between trees and along ridges just beyond the eye's focus, visible only in the corner of the vision, fading when acknowledged directly. Night amplifies the haunting. Lantern-like glows bob along the tree leans, revealing soldiers pausing mid-step or adjusting phantom gear. Cannon flashes punctuate the darkness, followed by echoing booms that ripple across the valley. Occasionally, the ghostly formations seem aware of the living, halting as hikers pass or shifting directions subtly, almost as if acknowledging the presence of intruders in their eternal vigil. Phantom encounters are not limited to the visual or auditory. Some visitors report an unshakable feeling of pressure against the chest, the sensation of invisible hands gripping, guiding, or warning them. Footsteps can be felt behind or beside the living, though no one is present. A sudden gust of wind may sweep through the trees, brushing against the face like a fleeting touch, accompanied by the faint sounds of distant commands or marching. It is as though the ridge itself is sentient, a guardian of the events that unfolded upon it, insisting that the living remember its legacy. Braddock Heights is a place where past and present intertwine, where history is replayed not only in textbooks but in the land itself, where the ridge remembers the French and Indian War, the later skirmishes, the lives lost, and the orders shouted in desperation. Those who linger too long find themselves caught in a liminal space, the living and the dead sharing the same air, the same wind, the same earth. Shadows march, Artillery flashes and whispers persist, a continuous reminder that some battles never truly end. Visitors leave Braddock Heights with a lingering unease, a sense that the ridge is alive with memory and vigilance. The soldiers, the artillery, the whispered commands, they remain bound to the land by duty and the weight of history. For those who walk its slopes, it is impossible to ignore that Braddock Heights is more than a hill in Frederick County. It is a guardian of its own violent past. Echoing endlessly through the night, its phantom soldiers marching forever, silent yet visible, bound to the ridge in spectral perpetuity. Fort Tenalloway, perched atop the rolling hills of western Maryland, stands as a quiet sentinel of America's revolutionary past. Its wooden walls and stone foundations are weathered with age, yet they carry an energy far older than the timber itself. By day, the fort appears peaceful, a relic of history visited by curious hikers and history enthusiasts. But as dusk approaches, a different presence takes hold of one that whispers of the soldiers who once stood watch here, bound by duty even in death. Visitors frequently speak of a sudden shift in atmosphere as the sun dips below the horizon, a chill settling into the bones, the wind carrying sound that cannot be explained, and an overwhelming sense that the fort itself is alive with memory. The most common reports involve footsteps echoing across the wooden floors where no one walks. Some claim to hear the steady tread of boots, synchronized as those soldiers are marching in formation, moving from the main gate to the ramparts, patrolling with the discipline of those trained long ago. These sounds appear and disappear without pattern, leaving observers frozen in awe or fear. Occasionally, the faint creak of a door or the groan of the old timbers accompanies the footsteps. Phantom musket flashes are another phenomenon that visitors often recount. Along the battlements and near the gatehouse, sudden bursts of light appear, brief and jagged, like the discharge of weapons fired decades or even centuries ago. The flashes are accompanied by faint sounds, a soft report of a gun, the distant clang of steel, and occasionally a muffled shout of warning or command. Those who have witnessed these phenomena describe a strange pull toward the light, as if the ghosts are reenacting their duty, invisible lines of soldiers frozen in a moment of alertness and action. Lanterns play a haunting role at Fort Tenalloway. As the sky darkens, faint glows flicker across the grounds, bobbing and weaving through the earthworks. Sometimes, visitors glimpse figures carrying these spectral lanterns, moving along the walls or through the gates with deliberate purpose. These apparitions are often fully formed, dressed in period uniforms, muskets in hand, faces tense with a concentration of sentries on watch. They vanish when approached, leaving only the soft sway of the lantern light and the echo of a distant command. The chill in the air is persistent and oppressive, especially at dusk. It often creeps along the stone walls, through open doorways and across the parade ground, sending shivers down the spine of even the most skeptical visitor. Some report the temperature dropping suddenly, accompanied by the scent of damper, smoke, or gunpowder, as though the past itself is pressing into the present. It is in these moments that the fort's energy feels strongest, as though the soldiers are still patrolling, inspecting, and guarding the site they once defended with their lives. Shadows stretch along the ramparts, slipping behind trees, or vanishing into the corners of the fort. Visitors describe feeling watched, the sensation of eyes upon them even when the grounds are empty. Some swear that their peripheral vision catches a figure pausing mid-step, adjusting a strap, or scanning the horizon, only to dissolve when looked at directly. The fort seems to hold its visitors in quiet observation, testing their awareness and respect for the history that saturates the site. The surrounding landscape adds to the haunted ambience. The echoes of the fort's ghostly activity carry beyond its walls. Travelers have reported hearing distant calls of commands, the clash of swords, or the rhythmic cadence of marching troops emanating from the earth itself. Even the rustle of leaves and the whisper of the wind through the grass seems to carry purpose, as the entire environment participates in the fort's spectral defense. Some visitors have attempted to communicate with the apparitions, only to find themselves overwhelmed by the energy of the place. A simple question spoken aloud might draw a sudden flurry of footsteps or the distant flash of a musket, a silent answer from the past. Lanterns may bob closer, then retreat, as if the spirits are acknowledging their presence without revealing themselves fully. Others have reported feeling the brush of a cold hand along their shoulder or arm, a fleeting touch that disappears before it can be examined, leaving only the memory and a racing heart. Fort Tenalaway's hauntings are not limited to a single type of activity. Light, sounds, shadows, chills, and touches converge to create an experience that is both immersive and unnerving. The fort is a place where the boundary between past and present feels thin, where the memories of soldiers who once trained, patrolled, and defended this position continue to echo in the wind, the walls, and the ground beneath the Visitora-s feet. It is a reminder that history is not only recorded in books or artifacts, but is also preserved in the very energy of places where life and death collided. Those who leave Fort Tenalaway often describe a lingering uneasia, a sense that the soldiers of duty is ongoing, that the fort is alive with the ghosts of the Revolutionary War. Footsteps echo in memory, lantern lights flash behind closed eyelids, and the chill of dusk remains long after departure. The fort is more than a historical site. It is a guardian of its own past, a place where the living are given a glimpse into a world that continues to march, patrol, and watch. For anyone who walks its grounds after dark, Fort Tenalaway is a vivid, haunting testament to duty, history, and the soldiers who never left. And so we leave the fields where history bleeds into eternity, where soldiers march still, caught between life and death, their cries echoing the wind, and their footsteps forever etched in the soil of Maryland. Next time you walk across a battlefield, remember, every rustle of leaves, every gust of wind might be a ghost soldier passing by, keeping watch, reliving the battles, honoring their fallen comrades. Thank you for wandering through these haunted battlefields with me. If you felt the chill, if you heard the phantom drums, like, share, and subscribe. It keeps the stories alive and the spirits entertained. Until next time, my brave Solsa, hold your head high, keep your lantern lit, and never forget, the past is never truly gone.